Chapter 9:38. Li Jing was a little confused. It was possible that Sun Lang would repeat his old trick and wait for the rabbit at the governor's office. In order to prevent such a situation from happening, he could either not go, bring more armored soldiers, or devise a plan. These were all good ways to deal with it. I understand all these principles, so why did he bring my wife along? Why? Chu Chen's martial arts aren't the best. Furthermore, there are so many capable people in the Heavenly Policy Mansion. Why did he choose my wife? Li Jing felt that something wasn't quite right. Ho Junji had already seen through everything and almost laughed out loud. Too bad, His Highness is truly too bad. And he was looking forward to it a little. Damn it, this fellow Li Jing is usually so arrogant, always showing off in front of this daddy. How is it? Are you stupid now? Are you stupid now? Something even more stupid will happen in a little while. Old Ho had deduced Sun Lang's frightening abilities and understood His Highness Empress's intentions. He wanted to use Hong Feng as a shield. TSK, TSK, TSK. Ho Junji had never gotten along with Li Jing, so he naturally wanted to watch the show in silence. He glanced at Sir Li and inwardly painted his hat green. In his confusion, Li Jing suddenly sensed something. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ho Junji looking at him strangely. That expression was so sneaky and suspicious. His heart trembled. This fellow Ho Junji, there really was something wrong with him. He had no injuries and didn't seem to have been beaten. It was already suspicious enough that Sun Lang had let him off so easily, and he had even dawdled for a while before returning. This won't do. I have to find a time to privately ask the soldiers present. If there really is a problem, I'll have to speak with His Highness. The loyal Sir Li had not forgotten his duty, but he was still rather concerned. So, why did he bring my wife along? It's a little strange. Facing Li Jing's surprised gaze, Empress's heart trembled slightly. Just now, he spoke too fast, but now he couldn't take it back. He could only beat Li Jing at his own game. But if that was the case, it was a good idea. While thinking of a way to deal with Sun Lang, she forced herself to explain Kanan was threatened by Sun Lang at the Copper Sparrow Terrace today. When I pay a visit, we will definitely talk about this matter. This matter concerns a girl's innocence. Do you men want to listen by the side? If we wait outside, there will be no one to protect us. Sister-in-law Chu Chun is a woman and is very understanding. Not only can she protect us, she can also help persuade Miss Ku. Although Li Jing still felt strange in his heart, he reluctantly accepted this explanation. In that case, I will send someone to call my wife over. Empress nodded happily. Then, he waved his hand and ordered the maid, pass down the order. Gather all my personal maids and martial arts attendants. Put on light armor and bring weapons. They will serve as my personal guards. Yes, Sun Lang, there is still such a way to deal with you. Not long after, the capital government received the news. Bao Shiren frowned and said, General Tensei? Logically speaking, Bao Haizi didn't like Sun Lang's lack of organization and discipline. He also had a bad impression of Empress. After all, anyone with a discerning eye could see what role Empress played in the Battle of Dahuang Mountain. But after all, although he could see it, he didn't have any evidence. Therefore, other than the occasional sarcastic words in the morning court, Bao Haizi couldn't do anything to Empress. But in private, he despised him. Now that Empress suddenly came to pay a visit, Bao Haizi was immediately on guard. She doesn't come with good intentions. He said to Kanan, Senior sister, you don't have to see him. I'll reject him for you. Although Sun Lang isn't a good person, Empress isn't that strong either. Don't worry, this is the capital government. I'm not a big or small person. I'm also one of the 3 assistants in the imperial court. As long as I have a clear conscience, I don't have to be afraid of anyone. Kunin smiled and said, I heard that you've been in charge of the capital government all these years. The officials don't dare to bully you. At first, I didn't believe it. Would junior brother Bao, who is only smart when solving cases but usually silly, have the authority of an official? Now that I look at him, it really does seem like it. Bao Shiren smiled bitterly and said, Senior sister, don't make fun of me. Should I reject him? Why should you reject him? Kunin stood up and said with a smile, Empress isn't here to denounce him. After all, She's a general of the imperial court and a politician through and through. She knows that gains and losses should be above personal preferences. Now, Sun Lang is her biggest threat, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, she's here to seek information and even cooperation. Bao Shiren frowned and said, "Cooperation? It's not quite appropriate to call it cooperation. After all, she's that kind of person." Kunan smiled and said, "If I'm not wrong, she's here to take advantage of the situation." The little girl's smile disappeared. Her eyes were sparkling, and a serious and steady look that didn't match her appearance appeared on her beautiful, white and tender face. Junior brother, the day when the four famous detectives work together again, is not far away. In the back hall of the Capitol office, the former star detective of the Capitol Police's Major Crimes Investigation Unit was having a meeting with a member of the Military Commission. When Bao Shiren led Empress into the room, Kanan, who had been waiting there, bit her lips and bowed gracefully. "Your Highness, I'm Kanan. I didn't know right from wrong this morning and was used by a villain. I was mistaken as an accomplice and offended a noble. I'm so sorry." The approachable Empress Tensei rushed forward and held Kunan's small body. "Miss Ku, you don't have to be so polite. I was too impulsive at that time. I didn't investigate the truth and said bad things. I have to apologize to you. Alas, it's all because that bastard is too cunning and bullies people." At the mention of this matter, Kunan's eyes turned red. She said sadly, "Your Highness, that general of divine strategies was too rude. His words were indecent and vulgar. He even had the intention to humiliate me." Empress said hatefully, "He who is unjust is doomed to destruction. He will suffer retribution." Kunan nodded vigorously and cried out, "Your Highness, you have to uphold justice for me." The two beauties, one big and one small, hugged each other. The big one had a cold and noble temperament, graceful and graceful, while the small one had a delicate and lovely appearance, innocent and unaffected. When the two beautiful faces hugged each other, it really gave off a breathtaking feeling of national beauty. Even Bao Shiren, who was an upright gentleman who didn't understand romance and didn't like women, shifted his gaze away. However, what was more subtle was that when the two beauties hugged each other, they were condemning a certain someone for being shameless, vulgar, and bullying women in unison. That appearance, that tone, and that choice of words, rather than a moral condemnation, it was better to say that they were complaining with resentment. The more Bao Shiren listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. Then he understood. He finally understood why it sounded so familiar. This was exactly the kind of case that he often handled. A man was rich, and his wife was old, but he didn't dare to divorce her. After all, abandoning his wife was a big crime. However, he still wanted to shoot her, so he secretly had a mistress outside. In the end, the wall was leaked and the matter was exposed. After a good beating, it was brought to the court. First, it was the wife who complained tearfully. Then, it was the mistress who cried. In the end, it developed to the two women hugging each other and complaining about the heartless man. It made the court very awkward. Damn it, that scene was really amazing. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Leaving aside the fact that Lord Bao was holding back his words, Her Highness the Emperor's concubine listened to Kunan's complaints and heard the little lowly talk about how Sun Lang threatened her step by step. She sneered in her heart. "Continue to make up stories. You don't have any meat on your body. How can Sun Lang like you?" But although she thought so, she still couldn't say it out loud. She could only slowly stroke Kunan's soft black hair and feel the youth and vitality contained in that small body. That soft skin, that soft black hair, and that extremely perfect face without any makeup. As a woman, she couldn't help but feel a little envious. This was an instinct, but after feeling envious, she realized that she was here to do business today. Thinking of this, she looked at Bao Shiren. "Lord Bao, can you leave us for a moment? As a man, I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to listen to these topics, right?" Bao Hei was startled at first. Then he looked at his senior sister. After receiving an affirmative answer, he said, "I was rude. Since that's the case, I'll leave first. I'll wait outside." Very quickly, all the irrelevant people in the room left, leaving only the Empress concubine and Kunan. Kunan was still sobbing. Empress was also unconsciously stroking the other's black hair. A moment later, Empress said faintly, "Can Sun Lang really cure your internal injuries?" Kunan was startled at first, then she continued to sob. He said he could cure it, but he wanted this humble girl to agree to his shameless request. Empress was still hugging Kunan, patting her back as if coaxing a child. She looked up at the beam and said indifferently, "So you agreed?" Kunan said blankly, "I didn't." Empress just snorted and didn't expose her. She said to herself, "Sun Lang definitely didn't touch you, right?" Kunan said in surprise, "What?" "From the moment he saw you, including in the carriage or in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, no matter what he said or did, he didn't touch you, didn't touch your hair, didn't rub your head, didn't hug your shoulders, didn't express his love through actions, right?" Empress said leisurely, "Not only that, he didn't even show any desire to touch you, right? He didn't have any thoughts, nor did he put them into practice. Do you want to know why? Because he can't touch you. He can't touch women. Do you know what this means? Just ordinary contact is not enough, let alone intimate contact, let alone cure. You don't believe it? It's okay. The next time you see him, no matter when, no matter the occasion, you can try to touch him. See if he will avoid you." She hugged the small body. When they were together, she could feel the other's breathing, heartbeat, and the tension of the body. This way, she could feel the other's emotional changes. Empress spoke while monitoring the changes in Kunan's body. "You could try it yourself and see if he's lying to you." She whispered in Kunan's ear, "Tell me, what did he promise you?" Chapter 9:39. Empress has gone to the Imperial Palace. The news was reported to Sun Lang. After the commander-in-chief chased away the Ku siblings, he closed the door to his room as his subordinates whispered to each other. No one knew what he was doing in his room, but everyone could feel the fluctuations of the Imperial army coming from the 7th floor of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. No one knew who Sun Lang was trying to harm. After the Ku siblings left the Copper Sparrow Terrace, Android and the others sent people to secretly monitor them for safety reasons. They found out that the two had entered the Imperial Palace. Kunan and the Imperial Palace's governor, Bao Shiren, were from the same sect, so it was normal for her to seek help from her junior brother. There was no need to disturb the commander-in-chief. However, Empress had personally gone to the Imperial Palace, which meant that Kunan might be in cahoots with Commander of War's #1 enemy. This was a major discovery. The few of them excitedly ran to find Sun Lang. The Commander of War opened the door with a displeased expression. After hearing the news, he only said, "Oh." Enjoa and his group of lackeys had watched a good show in front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple and had really enjoyed themselves. Now that they had come to report to Sun Lang, it was not that they did not want to watch another show. Seeing that Sun Lang was unmoved, they whispered, "Won't you go and block them? The Emperor's concubine is clearly trying to rope in Kunan and go against you, Marshal. Why don't you take this opportunity to teach her a lesson?" Sun Lang rolled his eyes, and 2 words came out of his mouth, "No time." Then he slammed the door shut. The few of them were frustrated and confused. Just like how the officials of Tensei were puzzled by Empress's strange behavior, the generals under Shansei were also puzzled by the commander's strange behavior. For a moment, they felt that it was very strange. They cautiously ran to the other side of the 7th floor and began to communicate with each other through secret voice sending. They limited their voices to a small space to prevent the commander-in-chief from hearing them. "I feel that something is wrong with the commander's return this time." Enjwa stroked his round chin and pondered. "Where's this place?" "This is the Copper Sparrow Terrace, the most famous brothel in the world. The girls here are all as beautiful as flowers and jade. Even I can't control myself when I see them. Think about it. Can a fledgling like him walk?" Pang Ji whispered, "Yes, he can. He walks as if he's flying. Every time he goes up and down the stairs, he's quick and nimble. When he wakes up in the morning, he's also calm. Even if the most beautiful courtesans in the capital live on the 6th floor, he doesn't even look at them." Everyone nodded heavily. If it was said that the marshal did not dare to do anything with these famous courtesans, they would naturally believe it. After all, they knew their old boss very well. They knew that although this young hero was glib with his words and had vast knowledge and experience when it came to posture and playing, he was unparalleled in the world, but when it came to actual combat, he was a fledgling. If they really pushed him into a brothel, they were afraid that his legs would immediately turn to jelly. Therefore, although this was the Copper Sparrow Terrace, they were completely sure that even if the commander lived with a group of beautiful courtesans, he would not have the courage to do anything. But not having the courage to do anything and not having the desire to do anything were two different things. Yes, he has no desire at all, Ponji whispered. A few days ago, we just picked the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He wanted to go around and ask around. He saw a few courtesans. Damn, his eyes were like looking at two pieces of meat that could talk. He was more like a teacher than the most old-fashioned teacher. My goodness. Shan Xiongxin stuck out his tongue and said, the sun rose from the west. They discussed for a while and came to a conclusion that puzzled them. After 2 years, Commander of War seemed to suddenly not be interested in women. Pang Mei was speechless. Is he still him? Android was the fattest, so he had the most courage. He thought, why don't we try it? Sun Lang did not know that his good friends were secretly planning something. He had just gotten inspiration and was now working on it. Shinsei sank his chi into his dantian, and his eyes shone with a dark golden light. The power of the 7 luminaries' sacred sword flowed in his hand, condensing into a substance and emitting light. One of the most powerful forces in the world was now in his hands. Sun Lang, who had made a Rasengan, did not feel satisfied. He stared at the dark golden light in his hand. The core faintly revealed a yellow and blue intertwined brilliance. That was the phenomenon of the 2 powers of the 7 luminaries fusing into one. He tried to separate the 2 entangled powers, but he failed. Another attempt ended in failure. He extinguished the Rasengan in his hand and sighed. Sure enough, it was not that simple. The current situation was that every time he picked up a sacred sword, in addition to the 7 luminaries' sacred sword original power, it seemed that he would awaken a more subtle side effect. Well, it was indeed a side effect, a complete side effect. The gold luminary's sacred sword had given him the powerful golden spear does not fall ability. Normally, this ability would make men cry and women fall silent, but on Sun Lang, it was completely useless. On the contrary, it made him stick out his 5th limb all day long, earning him the title of Sword Saint Jiao. And the Fire Luminary's sacred sword was even more outrageous. When he had a brief physical contact with Ho Junji, the other party's eyes, body, expression, and skin had all violently fluctuated and changed. Sun Lang knew what these changes meant, even if he used his dick. The mighty Shinsei general had been scared to the point of holding his head and screaming. The power of water, fire, and gold luminary's sacred sword combined was a blatant message to him. Go play with men. He could already guess what kind of person Mu Yao was. The heavens had pity on him. It was already terrible enough that he couldn't touch women for 2 years. If another restriction was added, he would definitely become the vanguard of revenge against society. Fortunately, after throwing away the Fire Luminary's sacred sword, this new ability disappeared without a trace. This not only allowed Sun Lang to breathe a sigh of relief, it also provided him with a new train of thought. Water and fire were opposites. The Fire Luminary's sacred sword could make women moan, and the Fire Luminary's sacred sword could make men moan. If he threw away the Fire Luminary's sacred sword, the ability to make men moan would disappear. So, if he threw away the Fire Luminary's sacred sword, would the ability to make women moan also disappear? There was a very high possibility that this would happen. But the problem was that the Fire Luminary's sacred sword was not on him. In his body, there was only the power that person had left behind to save him. It was power, it was protection, it was imprisonment, it was hope, and it was also a curse. The bloody battle in the great desolate mountain was the fiercest furnace. It forged Sun Lang, a transmigrator, into an unparalleled, pure, and perfect metal. In the never-ending bloody battle, the power from the Fire Luminary's sacred sword had already merged with his body. It was no longer something that he could casually expel. Even if Sun Lang's cultivation could be said to be unparalleled, he was still unable to expel this power. He couldn't even destroy his own martial arts. Just like the 8 extraordinary meridians and the Dantian Sea of Qi to a martial artist, they were intangible things. A martial artist could destroy his Dantian and break his own meridians, but who could pull out his meridians and dig out his Dantian? The surging power that was as vast as an abyss had long since merged with Sun Lang. So, to strip the fire luminary's sacred sword out was an impossible task. Unless Sun Lang looked at his right hand. A blue halo flashed faintly in his blood vessels. Unless he used the same method. Unless he had the fire luminary's sacred sword. Unless he had an old friend whose cultivation was on par with the fire luminary's sacred sword. A new sword saint who was extremely compatible with the fire luminary's sacred sword to help him. But the fire luminary's sacred sword was not in his hands. It was in that figure flashed across his mind. In the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, he caught a glimpse of a woman who was as delicate as a water lotus. She was strong in her reserve and stubborn in her silence. That was the widow of that person. The moment he saw her, Sun Lang sensed a familiar fluctuation. After the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, he left the ancestor demon's sword behind, but took away his old friend's sacred sword. He wandered aimlessly in the empire until his old friend's cenotaph was erected. Just like that person's reserved and proud wish, the words, Hutu West Conquering General, were engraved on the tombstone. He buried the sacred sword in the other person's cenotaph. Using the sacred sword as a medium, he added a restriction on the tomb. He originally thought that no one could open the restriction and take away the sacred sword, but now he sensed a familiar fluctuation on the body of his old friend's widow. He did not want to delve into the story that happened during this period, just as he did not want to disturb Shen Yaohua's life. No matter what, he had already implicated his old friend and did not want to implicate his widow. Sun Lang sighed and shook his head. He had already dismissed the idea of looking for Shen Yaohua, not to mention whether his guess was correct or not, and not to mention whether Shen Yaohua had the ability to help him solve the problem. He simply did not want to see that woman. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps outside. Sun Lang frowned slightly and looked at the door. Then there was a knock on the door, and it was quite urgent. He went to open the door, and the person who came was Su Dingfang. It was his turn to be on duty today. He looked a little shocked and said in a subtle and expectant tone, Empress is coming this way. Sun Lang was surprised. Is she addicted? Or does she think this is a sure thing? Su Dingfang blinked. They had been with Sun Lang for a long time, so they could understand this level of slang. He said the most important information concisely and comprehensively. She came with Miss Ke. Good girl, she's really something. Sun Lang rubbed his chin and said, so that's how it is. She wants to be a good person? She came here with great fanfare and even brought Kunan, a primary school student. She wants to ask me to treat Kunan's injuries. If I refuse, then I am a cold-blooded and heartless person. I am a man with a heart of stone who watches a young girl suffer from internal injuries. Not only that, this matter will be interpreted as me not giving Wu Ho face. Su Dingfang wanted to say something, but Sun Lang suddenly laughed to himself. This girl has learned quite well. I told her about the examples of moral kidnapping, but she can draw inferences from them and use them freely. Su Dingfang waited for Sun Lang to finish laughing and wanted to say something, but he did not expect Sun Lang to ponder and say, No, she did it once in the Imperial Temple, and she did it again by accident. That woman is not stupid. She has suffered twice, and this time she dares to deliver herself to me? She must have something to rely on. Did she make some preparations? Sun Lang, who was talking to himself, occasionally raised his head and suddenly found Su Dingfang looking at him with cold eyes. What's wrong? Nothing, Su Dingfang said indifferently. I suddenly feel a little strange. Sun Lang met the other's gaze and did not know why he felt a little guilty. He then angrily said, What are you looking at? Nothing much, Su Dingfang said indifferently. Empress is coming this way and will be here soon. When the time comes, how should I deal with her? Sun Lang rubbed his fists and said, Of course I will personally entertain her. Mother asterisk her, I was the one who told you about moral kidnapping, and you actually used this to deal with me. It's simply hilarious. Don't entertain her on the bed. Sun Lang looked at Su Dingfang. What did you say? Su Dingfang calmly looked into the distance. I didn't say anything. No, you definitely said it. Sun Lang said with an expression, and you are doubting my fighting will and backbone as a steely straight man. If you were in the army, you would be guilty of talking about the commander-in-chief at least 30 strokes. Su Dingfang said indifferently, backbone? Do you mean to confess your love to Empress in front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, and then crazily chase her and want to hug her? Marshal, you're really awesome. Mother asterisk her, these monkeys learn slang so fast. Sun Lang cursed in his heart, and then looked at Su Dingfang with disdain. What do you know? What is a confession of love? This is acting a cruel political struggle. It is my unparalleled means. Once the other party is careless and falls for it, half of her political career will be finished. Su Dingfang sneered at this. After all, he didn't know the tyrannical power of the general, and he didn't know that the commander-in-chief had already learned a strange skill that could make all the females in the world change their faces. Thus, he didn't know that Sun Lang only needed to touch the emperor concubine in front of everyone, and the other party would become very disgraceful and lose all face in front of everyone. If she went in a heat in front of all the officials, then her political career would be over. But he did not know. After all, it was such a shameful thing. Sun Lang still had to maintain the perfect image of a marshal and the majesty of a mountain in front of his subordinates. How could he expose his own shortcomings? Su Dingfang thought that Sun Lang was planning to create a scandal and hype up the marriage. After all, once the emperor granted the marriage, Empress would have to bid farewell to the throne. But this method was clearly not very stable. He thought for a while and still advised, I heard from Yin Song that you got along well with General Shui and General Lin and Jinling. They're deeply in love with you. You have to know. Marshal, you have to think clearly. If the matter between you and Empress is really made known to everyone, and even the Emperor grants the marriage, General Lin and General Shui will not let you go. Hearing this, Sun Lang suddenly shivered. Of course I asterisk king no, because it is not just these two peanuts, but that is just acting. Acting, understand? He snorted and said proudly, I don't need you to tell me that. It's just an act. Moreover, Big Sister Bao and Little Sister Lin's hearts are connected. They will definitely understand me and know that it's an act. It's fake. It's a special effect. It's a sacrifice I made for everyone's bright future. They can't wait to understand me, so why would they blame me? Speaking of this, he could not help but show a sense of superiority on his face. He looked down at Su Dingfang and snorted. This kind of mutual trust with your lover, you definitely don't understand. Su Dingfang was expressionless. Just from his sentence just now, he could conclude one thing. Although 2 years had passed, Marshall was still the same Marshall as before. He was unromantic and self-righteous. He was obviously an inexperienced young man, but he liked to brag and talk nonsense all day long. He showed off his useless love knowledge that he had heard from somewhere. He didn't understand women at all. When it came to other women, especially when that woman had been entangled with her man, which woman would be rational, which woman would understand, and which woman would be considerate. Since you are so confident, then do whatever you want. Su Dingfang glanced at Sun Lang's arrogant and superior appearance and completely gave up the idea of reminding him. It did not matter if he did not remind him about this kind of trivial matter. Sun Lang naturally did not notice the slightly pitiful eyes of his subordinates. He thought for a moment and began to arrange the first poisonous trap. Come, let's get ready. Then, Empress Tensei came. The team of nearly 100 people attracted the attention of many passers-by. The mighty team set off for the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The reason why it attracted attention was that the nearly 100 guards were all women dressed in tight clothes. They were all in high spirits, holding swords and knives. They were neatly dressed in white soft armor and white cloaks. They were all beautiful and tall. When they walked together, the visual effect was extremely shocking. Naturally, it attracted people's attention. Is it Her Highness Empress in the sedan? A passerby was surprised. Why is she going to the Copper Sparrow Terrace? A person came out of nowhere and said mysteriously, "Brother, you don't know, right?" The passerby looked at the mysterious guest, who suddenly appeared with a puzzled face. "Brother, who are you?" The person continued to explain. "Empress is a woman. Naturally, she is not going to prostitute. She's going to find someone." "Who is that person?" "Humph, it will scare you to death. That person is Her Highness Empress's sweetheart. Think about it. The man that Empress likes lives in a brothel all day. What is she doing there?" "Oh." The onlookers let out a low cry of understanding. The mysterious man continued. "Then do you know why Her Highness Empress's sweetheart lives in the Copper Sparrow Terrace all day? Because of him." This kind of rumor was spreading everywhere. When Her Highness Empress arrived at the Copper Sparrow Terrace, there was already a group of onlookers behind her. Onlookers were human nature. Besides, the good people under the Emperor's feet were even more fearless. They even dared to sue the powerful officials. So what if they wanted to see Empress? After Empress got off the sedan, before she could say anything, the opposite side came to show her power. "General Tensei, my shop is closed today. Please come back tomorrow." Chapter 940. Please come back tomorrow to whore again. That was what the person inside said. Empress had just stepped out of the sedan when she heard this sentence. Although she was very shrewd, she couldn't help but be angry. There was no other reason. Although the person who said this was not Sun Lang, such shameless words must have been instigated by him. This bastard really didn't let go of any opportunity to discuss people. However, she didn't come here to quarrel with people this time. She turned her head. In the sedan behind her, Kunin walked out timidly. Her face was filled with uneasiness and expectation. If all of this was acting, it was really like a little bitch. General Tensei slowly exhaled. In front of them was the gate of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. It was guarded by soldiers. The gate of the Copper Sparrow Terrace was closed. There was a tattered wooden sign with the words "Auspicious Room for Rent" nailed on it. She didn't come here to quarrel with someone. Empress was silent for a moment. Then she said loudly, "General Shunsei, please show yourself." Her voice was filled with internal energy and came from afar. After a moment, there was a response from inside. The tone was very strange. It was as if someone was pinching their nose and shouting. The tone was quite subtle. "What did Your Highness Empress say?" "This is the Copper Sparrow Terrace. It is a place of romance. It is a place where the old officials led by Wen Quanfu worry about the country and the people and serve the country loyally. Why is the general here?" The voice paused for a moment. Then the tone became more subtle. "The old man is upright and magnanimous. He worries about the worries of the world first and enjoys the pleasures of the world later. He worries about the people when he is high in the palace. He worries about the emperor when he is far away from the martial world. He has long been indifferent to women." "Ha. Ow, don't hit me." The other listeners were confused. Only Her Highness Empress thought for a moment. She couldn't help but sneer. She said loudly, "Sun Lang, I know you are inside. I also know you don't want to see me." "Wow." The person inside shouted exaggeratedly, "Your Highness Empress, why doesn't the marshal want to see you? I remember that the two of you are a match made in heaven. Is there some sort of misunderstanding?" "Shameless old thief." General Tensei glanced around. Although her entourage and guards were looking straight ahead, their heads were slightly tilted, as if they were interested in this gossip. Her heart was burning with anger. She shouted, "Don't pester me. Sun Lang, I'm here today for Miss Ko. She has suffered severe internal injuries, and you are the only one in the world who can save her." The Emperor's concubine did not wait for the person inside to reply, and continued, "This Miss Ko's master is Lord Wu Ho." Putting aside her master, Miss Ko was one of the 6 fan school's 4 famous arresters and solved many big cases for the imperial court. She has contributed greatly to the country and has also helped the people. Now that she has met with such an unforeseen event, us martial artists are duty-bound and naturally have to help. My knowledge is shallow and my ability is limited. I can't save her from danger, so I can only thicken my skin and beg you. Please think of a way." This was indeed an open conspiracy. In front of everyone, in the public, everyone heard it clearly. Cunan's identity as one of the 4 famous arresters was not much. But the important thing was that she was Wu Ho's disciple. In front of everyone, the little lowly's identity had another layer of halo. After all, Wu Ho was the master of the world. Although he had retired, but his virtuous name had spread all over the world. Regardless of whether it was the officials in the imperial court or the commoners, they all had full respect for the emperor's teacher. As the saying goes, love the house, love the crow. Naturally, they had a good impression of Cunan as Wu Ho's disciple. The crux of the problem was here. Empress blocked the door and shouted, causing the little lowly to shed a few more tears. If Sun Lang closed the door and did not treat her, even if it was just pretending to be dead, it would be hyped up by people with ulterior motives. It would evolve into the general not saving Wu Ho's disciple, and then the rumors would be simplified to the general looking down on Wu Ho. If it was confirmed, Sun Lang's body would have a wave of hatred. Not to mention the public's opinions. Even a neutral faction in the imperial court who had received Wu Ho's grace would feel uncomfortable. Moral kidnapping. Vicious, too vicious. Behind a rockery in the Copper Sparrow Terrace's vast garden, Sun Lang and Su Dingfang squatted together. Sun Lang rubbed his chin and muttered, "Treacherous, truly treacherous. This little girl really played such a trick. Too vicious." Su Dingfang was forced to act as Sun Lang's mouthpiece. Just now, he went against his conscience and said a few words. His heart was filled with grief and indignation. He rolled his eyes at Sun Lang. Sun Lang extended his hand and patted the back of his head. "What's with your eyes? Who looks at the marshal like that? This little girl is so vicious. Sigh, is she forcing me to use this trick? Come, pass the mouthpiece, prepare to speak." The Empress concubine waited for a moment, but there was still no reply. She sneered and wanted to take advantage of the situation to attack. Suddenly, an unwilling reply came from inside. "Your Highness, please forgive me. The general has his own difficulties." The woman was startled. What difficulties? After listening to Sun Lang's whisper, Su Dingfang hesitated for a moment. There was a struggle in his eyes. As a man with moral integrity, he felt physiological disgust towards Sun Lang's shameless speech. Sun Lang could say those shameless words without caring, but he couldn't pass them on as if nothing had happened. In the face of such a thorn, Sun Lang took out a can of herring from his pocket. "This is a foreign seafood. If you don't want to talk about it, eat this can. After eating it, I won't make things difficult for you." Su Dingfang looked at the small yellow can and then looked at Sun Lang. He sighed, and his face showed a tragic expression. Then he pinched his nose and shouted, all of this. Your Highness, the general is unwilling because of you." This kid's sixth sense was quite strong. Sun Lang put the can of herring beside Su Dingfang as a deterrent. The Empress outside was startled when she heard this. She felt bad, but it was too late. Su Dingfang swallowed his tears and shouted against his conscience. "Your Highness, do you know? Miss Ke's injury is an internal injury. She has to stimulate many of her vital acupoints at the same time. Moreover, she has to use all of her strength without any outside disturbance. This means that the general and Miss Ke have to take off their clothes and be in the same room. Moreover, there has to be very intimate contact." Oh. The onlookers in the distance let out low cries, full of meaning. Martial arts was the foundation of the country. It was the policy of the country and the customs of the people. It affected all aspects of the country, including the customs of the people and the culture of the marketplace. For example, the story of a scholar and a beauty in a restaurant was naturally not popular. What was popular were heroes and beauties, or those who worked hard to break off their marriage. It was a third-rate martial artist from the countryside of the empire who drifted to a foreign land and relied on his martial arts to woo a princess, a queen, a merchant lady, a cool and elegant great mage. This was what the people liked to hear and see. The people who respected martial arts liked to hear stories related to martial arts. And what the ordinary people liked to hear and see were things that were a little bit of the 3 vulgarities. Then, when the martial arts culture and the 3 vulgarities were combined, what would be produced? It was a silly boy and a chivalrous girl who had mistakenly taken an aphrodisiac. It was a hot-headed main character and a chivalrous girl who were naked using their martial arts to heal their injuries. Therefore, everyone's excitement was not without reason. It appeared. The plot of taking off one's clothes to heal their injuries appeared. Her Highness Empress was startled when she heard this. What does that have to do with me? Is this not good? But she quickly thought of Sun Lang's motive. Not good. Just as expected. Inside, Su Dingfang seemed to have given up on treatment and began to let go of himself. He shouted loudly with great emotion, "Your Highness, you should know what this means to a pure and clean girl. The general values friendship and righteousness. He is a straightforward and upright person. If such a thing happened between him and a woman, he would definitely take responsibility and marry this girl as his wife. Originally, this Miss Ku is a fairy-like person. Her character, talent, and appearance are all top-notch. If he could marry her, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but..." Su Dingfang shouted at the top of his voice. "But the general only has you in his heart." With a loud bang, the crowd burst into an uproar. Sure enough, since ancient times, when it came to gossip about men and women, the onlookers would open their eyes wide, not to mention the love story between Empress Tensei and General Shinsei. The onlookers who came to watch the show were all jubilant and had an expression of, "I didn't expect there to be such an unexpected harvest today." Her Highness Empress was shocked and angry. Shameless, shameless, shameless. How could this bastard be so shameless? And in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, facing Su Dingfang's contemptuous and pitiful eyes, Sun Lang touched his chin and said in pain, "There is no other way. There are scoundrels in the court, and there are always bad people who want to harm me. In order to protect myself, and for the future of the Empire, I must use the same dark method to fight back. Good people have to protect themselves." Su Dingfang faintly said, "I think shamelessness is your strongest shield." Sun Lang kicked him. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Why don't you take advantage of the victory and pursue the attack?" Su Dingfang sighed. "Damn, why is it my turn to be on duty today?" He turned around to take a look and saw the people on the balcony of the 7th floor of the Luanfeng Hemming building. A group of sluts were eating fruits and seeds with relish. When they saw him turn around, they gave him a thumbs up. No wonder this group of people disappeared just now, and only I foolishly bumped into them. I am still too young. Su Dingfang's heart was filled with regret, but there was nothing he could do. He could only continue to shout, "Your Highness, do you understand the general's intentions? Because he has you in his heart, he is not willing to have any entanglements with Miss Ku. Even if Miss Ku does not care, the general will not be able to pass the trial in his heart. For you, he would rather reject Miss Ku and take the risk of offending the Martial Marquis. He would endure the torture and condemnation in his heart, and would not allow the feelings in his heart to change in the slightest. Your Highness, do you really not understand this kind of feeling? I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore." When Su Dingfang said this, he already felt dizzy. This was a physiological desire to vomit. Sun Lang sinisterly said, "Continue, continue." Su Dingfang's eyes were filled with accusation. Finally, he closed his eyes, steeled his heart, and shouted, "Your Highness, it is hard to satisfy both sides. Whether or not we can cure Miss Ku does not depend on the general, but on you." Empress was stunned. "Me?" Su Dingfang used all the strength in his body and shouted, "The general is devoted to you and will not marry anyone other than you. If we cure Miss Ku, we will have to take responsibility for Miss Ku. So, this matter does not depend on whether the general is willing to cure, but on whether or not your Highness is willing to share." Chapter 9:41. It exploded in an instant. These words were really too explosive. The people watching the show on the Luanfeng and Ming Tower were dumbfounded. The fruits and seeds in their hands fell to the ground. And Su Dingfang, the loyal Su Dingfang, his face became very pale. His spirit was somewhat dispirited, as if he had fought with a strong enemy for 3 days and 3 nights. He had fulfilled his duty, but he had also paid a great price and lost a lot of things. After saying those words, his back was no longer straight. Instead, it was slightly bent. His whole body leaned against the rockery as if he had just finished stroking. He looked at the clear sky of the imperial capital with a dazed expression. His eyes were drifting, and his voice seemed to come from the ninth heaven. It was very ethereal. He slowly said, "Marshal." Sun Lang was in a very good mood. "What's wrong? You and Empress are enemies, right?" "Yes." "Are you a mortal enemy?" "Yes." "You and she are both important ministers of the imperial court and generals of the army, right?" "Yes." "You two military giants are tit for tat. It's almost equivalent to two aristocratic families going to war, right?" "Yes." Su Dingfang lowered his head and glanced at him. His tone was very complicated. In the imperial court, the struggle between the factions of important officials is done step by step. It is done after careful consideration and calculation. It is either a white-hot fight or an undercurrent of fighting. There are precedents in the history books, and even in the current imperial court. Sun Lang's answer this time was somewhat hesitant. "Is that right?" Su Dingfang's eyes stared straight at him. "Then, General, why did the struggle between you and Empress become like this? You are an important minister of the imperial court, right? You are a military giant, right? Originally, it should be a laughing and humorous conversation in the imperial court. But why did it become like this?" Sun Lang was silent for a moment and sighed. "Because I'm a good person." "Huh?" "Yes, because I'm a good person," Sun Lang said solemnly. "How cruel is the struggle between factions? Empress and I are the chessmen, and you are all chess pieces. Chess pieces have to fight on the battlefield. Chess pieces have to eat chess pieces, and there are risks of being eaten. I'm very touched that you are here to support me. This is my business. How can I bear to put you in danger? Therefore, under such circumstances, I still hope that a handsome man like me can carry more things, even if it's gradually becoming difficult for me to bear." He patted Su Dingfang's shoulder and said with a sigh, "Just like this time, I used such a reason to trap myself in injustice and smear my own reputation. Who do you think I'm doing this for? If I endure more humiliation today, you might be able to shed less blood tomorrow." "That's right. I'll bear all the sins alone." Su Dingfang couldn't bear it anymore and said with grief and indignation, "I also bear a lot, not to mention other things. Just the words that he conveyed today would simply become a psychological shadow for the rest of his life." After all, Su Dingfang was still a simple and pure man who cared about his face. Speaking lies against his conscience, especially to this degree of lies, he really couldn't get over this hurdle in his heart. Sun Lang shouted exaggeratedly, "You're just a F*** mouthpiece. What do you have to bear? I'm the one who bears the heavy responsibility. Okay? I'm a pure and innocent man. But for you guys, I had to endure the humiliation of going back to the same old grass. I shamelessly stirred up a scandal with my ex-girlfriend without any bottom line, and even hooked up with a legal lowly. This is gambling with my reputation. Do you know how hard I'm working?" "Bah." Su Dingfang couldn't bear it anymore. "I quit." Sun Lang didn't say anything. He pinched his fingers and opened a small hole in the can of herring. An extremely stinky breath of hell rushed out. "Stop work after eating." The next moment, Su Dingfang's voice sounded out again. He shouted very resolutely, "Your Highness, this is the reason why the Commander-in-Chief refused. To save Miss Ku or not, it's up to you. Are you willing to share your feelings with Miss Ku? Is Miss Ku willing to share the Commander-in-Chief's feelings with you? For this matter, I ask the two of you to explain. If it wasn't for Emperor's concubine's shrewdness and mental fortitude being extremely strong, she would probably be stomping her feet and cursing right now. But even so, she was still furious in her heart. There was also extreme irritation that lingered in her heart, making her feel incomparably sullen and furious. Why? Why would Sun Lang, this bastard, always come up with an unexpected method to neutralize every single one of his schemes? Why does he always have a way? Why am I always unable to predict it? This kind of opponent who doesn't play according to common sense. Her idea was nothing more than to use public opinion to force Sun Lang to state his position. If he refused to treat her, it meant that he looked down on Wu Ho. If he was forced to agree to treat her, she could take the opportunity to observe Sun Lang's background and even arrange the next step of the plan. She didn't expect Sun Lang to kick the ball back to her, and it was even done with a jiao. She welcomed all kinds of gazes. Her heart was extremely shocked and angry. She shouted loudly, "Nonsense! I have no relationship with Sun Lang. I don't even know." Before she finished speaking, a voice suddenly sounded from inside. "Your Highness Empress, do you want to take the initiative to withdraw and help Miss Ko? If that's the case, the Commander-in-Chief won't be happy. The more unhappy he is, the better." Her Highness Empress was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Under Sun Lang's pressure, Su Dingfang continued to pursue the victory. "Love is selfish. Your Highness, you can't do this. I know that you are willing to sacrifice yourself for others. To treat Miss Ku's injuries, you are willing to give up the Commander-in-Chief. But please consider the Commander-in-Chief's feelings. If you do this, he will not be happy. If he loses you, what reason does he have to treat Miss Ku?" The other side said firmly, "That is to say, if your Highness wants Miss Ku to recover, you must not deliberately draw a line with the Commander-in-Chief. You must not ignore him. A forcefully picked melon is not sweet. Modestly giving in will not have any results. After all, compared to Miss Ku, your Highness is 1,000 times more important. If you treat the Commander-in-Chief coldly, because of this, the Commander-in-Chief will definitely not treat Miss Ku. Me? Fuck. Him. Milk. Milk." Empress almost had the urge to take the Heavenly Origin Blade and kill her way into the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Fuck, 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 fuck. She cursed loudly in her heart. The meaning of this sentence is, if I want to treat Kanan, that little wench, not only can I not throw away Master Sun Lang's cold face, I have to treat him nicely. Not only that, I have to. Su Dingfang helped her complete the conditions. The Commander-in-Chief knows that you will come, but he is in a dilemma. He does not know how to face you. He does not know how to face Miss Ku's tears. So he entrusted these words to me. Through my mouth, he will convey his feelings to you. That is to say, if you are really here for Miss Ku and really want to save this disciple of Wu Ho, then I ask you to have the corresponding awareness. The Commander-in-Chief will not give up on his feelings for you. This is the foundation of everything. If you want to treat Miss Ku, then the Commander-in-Chief will have to marry this young lady. If you're willing to agree to this matter, then please help Miss Ku with her thoughts and explain this matter to Wu Ho. Also, on the Commander-in-Chief's side, I ask you to go and persuade him. He is a good man who is devoted to you, but is forced to marry someone else. To him, it is hard to accept. Empress was on the verge of exploding. Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. She kept on cursing in her heart. What the fuck is this supposed to mean? What the fuck is this supposed to mean? That is to say, if I want to treat Kanan's injuries, I have to be prepared to share a husband with someone else. Not only that, I have to work with the girl's thoughts, I have to explain to her family and master, and I have to go back and persuade my husband to think things through and agree to marry another wife. So, to say, who, want, marry, give, he, has. He was about to go crazy. This shameless speech not only caused the Emperor's concubine to fly into a rage, it also caused Su Dingfang to burn out. The loyal General Su used the last of his willpower to yell out, "That's all I have to say. Your Highness the Emperor's concubine, this is a dilemma. How to decide will be up to you and Miss Ko. The General is not here to avoid you and give you time to think, so as to avoid awkwardness between the two sides. You and Miss Ko should go back and think clearly." Saying this, Su Dingfang looked at Sun Lang weakly, his eyes revealing a questioning look. "Does that mean I'm going to let the other party go like this?" Sun Lang nodded. Of course, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. When fishing, one had to often loosen the line to prevent the fish from struggling too much, not to mention that the other party was Empress. Not to mention other things, if that woman was angered, and if a cornered dog jumped over the wall, her head would be hot, and she would say something shocking, such as agreeing. Then this matter would be serious. When the Emperor's concubine heard this, she took a deep breath. She knew that this was Sun Lang giving her a way out. But she had no choice but to go down the stairs. It wasn't that there weren't any countermeasures, such as going all out with the plan, but she turned back to look at Kunan. Kunan's expression was very helpless and panicked. Her performance was very good. This little bitch's position was unclear. If she suddenly schemed against her and said something she shouldn't say, then this matter would be irreversible. Her Highness Empress clenched her teeth. After a moment of silence, she shouted, "Go back." And the onlookers were all satisfied, especially the onlookers. It could be imagined that today's matter would be spread out, and there would be countless topics of discussion. A storm dissipated into nothingness. Other than Empress, everyone was very happy to hear it. In the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, Sun Lang said proudly, "Humph, I already said that she learned this moral kidnapping from me. She actually dares to fight with me. What a big joke." Su Dingfang looked at him gloomily. In view of the psychological trauma he had suffered before, he decided to remain silent. Keep acting, keep acting, keep acting. If you keep acting like this, let's see what will happen when Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai enter the capital. Chapter 942. Time flew by, and 2 days passed in a hurry. After the exchange of blows in the Imperial Ancestral Temple, Sun Lang and the Emperor were once again locked in a strategic stalemate. The situation in the Imperial Court was tangled and complicated, and the situation in the Imperial capital was treacherous. People from all sides had different motives, and their demands were all different, but they were mostly for the sake of benefits. In these 2 days, invitations had been sent in like snowflakes, and there was an endless stream of visitors. There were even challengers who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Sometimes, it was even livelier than when the Copper Sparrow Pavilion was open for business. And the most active were the speculators with ulterior motives. For example, the envoys of the various countries visited in person, full of sincerity and deep affection. They brought large quantities of their country's products, such as Xuanshui's magic potions, Lihua's guns, Rue Jin's ingenious weapons, and Greenwood's draconians, made brimming with vitality. To these foreigners, the powerful Empress Hutu was their greatest imaginary enemy. If such a colossus were to fall into internal strife, it would undoubtedly be in the interest of their country. They had noticed the signs of unrest from Sun Lang, and if Sun Lang wanted to have some sort of conflict with the emperor, they would definitely support him. In addition, the people of their country were also unwilling to be left out. Merchants who were good at speculation came to offer land deeds. Declining aristocratic families came to gamble and make a comeback. Officials who were ostracized by their colleagues and bullied by their superiors came to seek refuge. And young people who dreamed of ascending to the heavens in a single step came to take him as their master. Batch after batch of reckless and ambitious people sought an opportunity in Sun Lang. There was no shortage of red-eyed gamblers in the world. The most ridiculous thing was a group of people who claimed to be surnamed Sunday. They cried and yelled as they ran over to acknowledge their relatives, saying that they were Sun Lang's long-lost relatives or something. They even brought along their family tree and ran over to pretend to be elders. But without exception, they were all rejected. Was it because the Shinsei general was so arrogant that he disdained to interact with these common people? No, of course not. The general was amiable and approachable, loyal and honest. He was one of the most down-to-earth people in the world. So how could he be so pretentious? The answer was very simple. This was the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Yes, a brothel. You came here to visit General Shansei and come here every day. What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? General Shansei was a great hero who served the country and the people. Naturally, he would not lust after women and serve the country wholeheartedly. Otherwise, he would not have said the famous phrase, "The sky demon has not been destroyed. How can I be a home?" Did you come here to look for General Shansei because you thought he was a prostitute like Lord Wen Quan and Lord Fu when who were passionate about Star Wars? The general on duty who was in charge of guarding the Bronze Sparrow Terrace replied. The visiting guests were all speechless. More and more people came to visit, but were turned away, and the reputation of Lord Wen Quan Fu rose accordingly. The intelligence about this civil official's sexual habits, anecdotes, and even his endurance flew to the streets and alleys of the capital as if it had grown wings. Not only did it make the person involved fly into a rage, but it also made the officials who had been blackmailed keep quiet out of fear, feeling extremely frustrated. That's right, prostitution is not against the law, but as the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger, and gossip is a fearful thing. You've been slandered by 70% true and 30% false. Do you still want your reputation? In short, people with ulterior motives were all turned away. Only then did they realize that they could not find Sun Lang. This was the Bronze Sparrow Terrace, a brothel. If you came to a brothel every day to look for someone, it would make it seem as if General Shunsei lived in a brothel. It was too undignified. Therefore, they asked, "Where is General Shin's residence?" The general guarding the gate had obviously been educated by General Shunsei, and his answer was very appropriate. Although the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Works had not allocated a residence for General Shunsei did not care. He came from the crowd, so he wanted to go to the crowd. At this time, he was in the marketplace with the common people, and his whereabouts were uncertain. Only the common people knew where General Shunsei was. Hearing this, some rich people were invigorated. "You don't have a house yet, right? I can give it to you. There are all kinds of furniture and servants, and it is very convenient to move in with a bag. My daughter is also staying inside." But they still refused righteously. General Shunsei said that he would not take a needle or a piece of thread from the common people, and he would not take the daughter of a fellow villager. In short, his answer was very appropriate, and could be said to be watertight. General Shin's half-hidden face made these people even more eager. After all, General Shunsei was such a famous and prestigious Tianyuan general. In just a few days after returning to the capital, he had done a few earth-shattering things. He had the momentum to laugh at the imperial power. If they did not hug such a golden thigh now, when would they? They knew that Sun Lang was hiding in the Bronze Sparrow Terrace, but they could not force their way in. After all, General Shunsei had already designated this place as a military-restricted area. Outside the originally elegant, quiet, low-key, and grand Bronze Sparrow Terrace, there was a sign every 20 steps. Under the lifelike skull, there was a drawing of 2 bloody bones and engraved with bold strokes. "Take 1 step forward, and you will be in prison forever." In the past 2 days, there were quite a few masters of lightness skills and heroes who did not believe in heresy who entered the Bronze Sparrow Terrace at night to spy. Those who were not good at kung fu were directly discovered by the war dogs and then caught by the soldiers and hung up to be beaten. Those who were good at kung fu suffered the same fate. After a few steps, they were knocked out by a mysterious force, and they had no idea how they fell. These chivalrous men who broke into the house at night were hung in the latrine for an entire night. After dawn, they received ideological education from the military and were taught about the laws of Hutu. Then they were threatened. If you were in a barbaric place like Xianshui, you thieves who broke into private houses would have been shot to pieces by Remington shotguns. The spirit of the speech was, "You scumbags feel lucky that General Shunsei is a supporter of a society ruled by law." Then, these warriors who were dizzy from the smoke were handed over to the capital government. Their crimes were breaking into private houses, spying on women, spying on military camps, conspiring against the law, spying on state secrets, and so on. Bao Shiren had 10,000 curses in his heart. In short, General Shunsei did not come out, and the visitors could not do anything. Forcing their way in was even more impossible. It was really helpless. In addition to coming to his door every day to coax and pester him, they ran to the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Works to pressure him. It seemed that everyone had become enthusiastic about the treatment of soldiers, causing the pressure on the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Works to increase. Every day, there were people who accused them of being overstaffed, of not taking General Shunsei seriously. Sun Lang's side was very lively, and the Emperor's side was about the same. Perhaps it was because of the hints from the higher-ups, or perhaps it was because of the awareness of the lackeys, but there were more and more different voices in the past 2 days. The spearhead faintly pointed at General Shunsei. Some carefully crafted rumors gradually rose in the marketplace. It was said that many important people had privately expressed their dissatisfaction with Sun Lang. Of course, these were only rumors. The impeachment memorials were not sent out, and there was no virtuous and respected personage who jumped out to publicly accuse or question Sun Lang. Just as Sun Lang had not met with anyone, the emperor had also never expressed his attitude. Because all of this was just an appearance. The people who sided with Sun Lang wanted to use this opportunity to seize more benefits. The people who opposed Sun Lang were afraid that Sun Lang's return would harm their interests. That was all. Those who had vested interests wanted to protect their own interests, and those who were greedy wanted more benefits. It was clear that the struggle between the emperor and the commander of war would set off great waves. Chaos meant that the cards would be reshuffled. It meant that the former had to tighten the defense line, while the latter could take advantage of the chaos to seek more. The world was bustling with activity, and everyone came for profit. The movements of the various parties in the court usually revolved around these two words. Most people had to think about their own land, and loyalty that did not ask for anything in return was far too rare. Thus, the emperor and Sun Lang both maintained their calm and did not act on their own initiative. They were still in a stalemate. However, no matter how the people with different thoughts acted, the two highest players in this game of chess still maintained their calm. They both knew what they wanted. No matter what their interests were, what the struggle between the parties was, what the temple was, Sun Lang and the emperor's goals were both very clear. Sun Lang wanted revenge, and the emperor wanted to live forever. For revenge, Sun Lang had to stop the emperor from living forever. If the emperor wanted to live forever, he had to stop Sun Lang's revenge. And the best way to stop the enemy's actions was to completely destroy the enemy. Thus, Sun Lang wanted to get rid of the emperor, and the emperor also wanted to get rid of Sun Lang. At the same time, they were keenly aware that their enemy was very powerful. They could not act blindly without thinking. They had to kill in one strike. Otherwise, if they acted hastily and did not obtain the desired result, they would inevitably alarm their opponent and invite a storm-like counterattack. Thus, they would be at a disadvantage. Thus, they were all waiting. Sun Lang was waiting. The emperor was waiting. They were waiting for the other side to reveal a true flaw. They were waiting for a chance to strike and seize victory in one strike. For Sun Lang, this sort of chance was very simple. How to pull down an emperor who had been in power for more than 20 years, who had won the Great War of Tianyuan during his reign, and who was destined to be immortalized through the ages. Moreover, through a proper struggle in the court, there was only one method. If the emperor lost his virtue, the officials could appoint a new emperor. As long as the emperor lost his virtue, it would be fine. If the emperor lost his virtue, there would be an excuse to depose the emperor. But the power in the court was intricate. The country had just finished the Great War of Tianyuan. Weapons were stored away, and horses were let loose. But the protracted war had created a large class of military officers and a large number of interest groups. The court was full of heroes, and there were countless famous officials. They were all heroes of their generation, and each had their own interests. To depose the emperor was a huge matter. One had to either subdue the court or reach a consensus with the majority. The former was very difficult. Sun Lang might be able to kill them all, but he would not be able to convince all of them. In comparison, the latter was actually very simple. Because the emperor wanted to live forever, the emperor's plan to possess the body of the imperial army was enough to threaten the personal safety of every official. This would touch everyone's bottom line. And the emperor who did such a thing was undoubtedly a tyrannical and fatuous ruler. The officials would rise together to attack and depose the emperor without any psychological pressure. As long as the truth was revealed to everyone, Sun Lang would be assured of victory. But this sort of thing required evidence. Otherwise, it would be easy for the emperor to bite back. After all, the emperor had this sort of weakness, and so did Sun Lang. While the Great Desolate Mountain Battle had been a sinister attempt by the emperor to hide the bow after all the birds were gone, Sun Lang had also done something in that bloody battle that had shaken the foundation of the Empress Tuesday. If this matter were to be revealed, it would undoubtedly cause a massive uproar. He had left an almost indelible scar on the soul of the Origin Demon Sword, causing the Empire to lose the ability to create an imperial army. To the Empire, this was a destructive tsunami. The country only cared about interests, not right or wrong. If this matter were to be revealed, Sun Lang would be in an extremely unfavorable situation because this matter was far too serious. In his room on the 7th floor of Luan Fengming Pavilion, Sun Lang had a profound gaze as he looked down at the capital. He was currently looking at the Imperial Palace. In the current situation, he and the Emperor had a rather tacit understanding. The Emperor would not yell that Sun Lang had damaged the Origin Demon Sword and thus shaken the foundation of the Empire, and Sun Lang would not publicly announce that the Emperor wanted to control the Imperial Army and turn the officials into meat toys. But this tacit understanding was extremely fragile, because while they were locked in a stalemate, the two of them were constantly searching for the other's weakness. They both knew that the other had done some earth-shattering thing, and they knew that the slightest mistake would completely destroy the other. It was precisely because this was such a powerful weapon that it had to be used in a decisive battle, because saying it out loud would mean the final battle. How troublesome, Sun Lang said to himself. This was the price of obeying the rules. Everything had to be done according to the rules. Now that he had entered the game, the stage of the game had shifted to the open. Politics was an arena of rules, and since he had entered the game, he had to abide by the rules. Abiding by the rules meant that Sun Lang could not charge into the Imperial Palace and blow up the Emperor's dog head. But this was not entirely a bad thing. Playing the game within the bounds of the rules of the game meant that the rules of the game could also protect you. Sun Lang did not need the protection of the rules, but the people he cared about needed it. Directly blowing up the Emperor's dog head was indeed refreshing, but because of this, he would become the enemy of the world. In the past, he might not have cared, but now he had people he cared about. Even if it was for them, he could not easily do such a thing. There were gains and losses in everything. Since he had obtained peace of mind, he had to bear the corresponding burden. There was nothing to say about this. He hoped that Yin Luo and the others could live in a friendly world. In addition to this, there were many other benefits. For example, if you followed the rules of the game, it meant that you could form a team. The opponent was the Emperor, so there were many people who were potential allies. You could use their strength to accomplish many things. You did not have to fight a boss alone or explode an artifact. Of course, the most important benefit was the initiative and deterrence. Sun Lang could directly blow up the Emperor's dog head, but he did not use this method. Instead, he chose to follow the rules of the game and participate in the political game of the imperial capital. This was a detour, but it could also remind the Emperor of one thing. If one day he provoked him, he could jump up and blow up his dog head at any time. What an interesting game. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the capital government. The day before yesterday, Empress came and was rebuffed. She could only leave with her tail between her legs. These 2 days, she was very peaceful. He did not know what kind of bad things she was secretly planning. Kunan, on the other hand, was living in the capital government. She also closed her door and did not see any guests. No matter if it was her former best friend, her colleagues in the 6th Fan School, or Wu Ho's disciples, she did not see any of them. By the way, the rumors about Sun Lang, Empress, and Kunan spread like wildfire. The story between the three of them became the biggest topic in the taverns and tea houses. The Shinsei general had underestimated the poor spiritual life of the people in the feudal society and their desire for gossip. When he heard Yin Song's pitiful report, he was slightly panicked, but he could not show his cowardice in front of his former subordinates. He could only stubbornly say things like, "Steady, steady, don't panic, they will understand me." Yin Song and the others did not say anything, but they secretly gathered together and laughed wildly. As a result, the Copper Sparrow Terrace was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Everyone was waiting for the general to get a new wound on his face. Other than that, according to what Sun Lang knew, as early as 3 days ago, an imperial edict had quietly left the capital. It was going to Nanping in Tangzhou. The eunuch who delivered the edict was going to find a man called Song Huifu. He was once a fourth-level prosecutor. Later, he resigned and returned home. Before he entered the procuratorate, he was a member of the public security department. He was once one of the four famous arresters, the same sect as Kunan and the others. Kunan, Di Huaying, Song Huifu, and Bao Shiren. The four famous arresters of the past were about to reunite. They would become the emperor's new pawns. Of course, they would also be Sun Lang's. The emperor wanted to gather the four famous arresters, and Sun Lang was waiting for them. He turned his gaze back to the magnificent imperial city. That was the emperor's residence. It held the greatest secret that the emperor did not want outsiders to know. Every time he looked there, his soul would throb. There was something he was familiar with there. It was a monster that had accompanied him for 6 years. He used to think of him as a strict master, but also a friend that he could confide in. He used to think of him as his accompanying grandfather, but he did not expect him to be a bottomless nightmare. The debt was written off, but the hatred was not. 2 years ago, he let you go, but this time, you can't escape. Panji knocked on the door, then pushed it open and entered. Song Huifu has already entered the capital. According to reliable sources, he will enter the imperial court tomorrow. If nothing unexpected happens, the emperor will send the four famous arresters to investigate Qi Lianyan's death and the inside story of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. These people are not easy to deal with. Sun Lang said indifferently. Bao He is the most stubborn. He believes that the inside story of the Sky Demon at the Copper Sparrow Terrace is fake and will definitely investigate to the end. As for Song Huifu, I heard that he is even worse than Bao He. Di Huaying is a smart person who knows when to advance and retreat, but in this kind of situation, he will not be able to stay out of it. Kunan, because of my rejection, will definitely be filled with hatred. Her attitude will greatly affect the thoughts of the other three. Most importantly, they are the disciples of Wu Ho. Panji said worriedly, so their actions will be interpreted by many as the attitude of Wu Ho. This is politics. Sun Lang smiled. Isn't this better? Panji was startled at first, then shook his head. It sounds like all of this is part of your plan? In other words, poor Bao He will inexplicably become your pawn again? Sun Lang smiled. I have my own plans. Panji tactfully did not ask any more questions. Being observant and having a good grasp of the situation were essential qualities of a wise person. Those who did not have these two qualities usually did not have a good ending, such as Yang Xiao, Yang Dezu, and Registrar Yang. He continued, other than that, you should worry about tomorrow's imperial court. Last time, you thought a way to mess up the morning court. This time, we will have a proper imperial court. Sun Lang was very relaxed. What should I worry about? Panji said helplessly, about your authority. Although you have the title of General of the Shunsei, and perhaps you can establish a government, the imperial court does not know what to do. This is the emperor's plan. He wants you to snatch food from the mouths of other important officials. Tomorrow, there will definitely be a battle. Sun Lang yawned. About this, I don't think I need to worry. My imperial court's monarch is a man of great talent and bold vision. My imperial court's officials value talent. They clearly understand my ability and talent, so they will definitely consciously arrange a job and work for me that is commensurate with my ability. Panji curled his lips in disdain. Do you want to go to some government office to retire? Of course not. Sun Lang blinked. Let me give you a hint. What major events have happened in the country recently? Panji thought for a moment, then blurted out, military examination. Sun Lang nodded happily. Panji widened his eyes. You want to compete for the position of chief examiner of the military examination? Sun Lang said proudly. It's not that I want to, they invited me. Panji was shocked and widened his eyes. Are you kidding? If you become the chief examiner of the military examination, it means that this year's Wu Jinshi will naturally become your student. You are already very arrogant in the imperial court. His Majesty would only increase your strength if he had nothing better to do. You, Sun Lang smiled mysteriously. You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, let's make a bet. Pongji did not even think and blurted out, "Bet on what?" Chapter 943. The sky was still dark, and the moon hung high in the sky. The night in the capital was quiet. Most people were still in their sweet dreams, but the most powerful people in the country had already been woken up by their families. They ate a simple special breakfast, drank a little water, and sat on the toilet to completely empty themselves. Then, under the service of their families and servants, they boarded carriages or palanquins and rushed to the imperial palace in the center of the capital. They prepared to attend the morning court meeting that was held once every 3 days. The court system was to hold a court meeting every 3 days regardless of rain or shine. It had already become an unshakable and necessary procedure in official life. Other than those hot-blooded hotheads who had just obtained a right to attend court and were ambitious and ready to do great things, the wily old foxes who had been officials for many years had long become impatient with attending court. But the situation now was different. The originally calm political environment of the imperial capital had already started to ripple slightly. Because of one person, the morning court meeting 3 days ago was the first time that person had appeared in court. In the end, he had caused big news in the imperial ancestral temple. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was firmly in control of the situation. He had even caused His Majesty to suffer an unspeakable loss. Now, all the officials knew in their hearts that the commander of Warback then had not come with good intentions. Today was the second court meeting since his return. What kind of trouble would occur this time? Many people's hearts were in a mess, but even more people were a little excited. After all, it was human nature to be an onlooker. Even high-ranking officials and dignitaries were no exception. The only difference between them and the commoners was their structure and status. For example, as long as the commoners saw the quarrel between the shrews of their neighbors, they would find it interesting. However, the men would definitely not like to see this. What was there to see about two boorish shrews quarreling? It was unsightly to the eyes and was extremely vulgar. Extremely vulgar, extremely vulgar. But this did not mean that the men did not like to watch the quarrel. They did not like to watch the shrews quarrel because the level and style of the two parties involved were too low. There was no entertainment value. However, the quarrel between the Shinsei general and His Majesty the Emperor was very King interesting. If he didn't, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Today was the second court meeting since the general had returned to the capital. This time, there would not be any more accidents in the imperial ancestral temple. The general should formally step into the court. This meant that he would stand above the golden hall and below the royal steps. He would face the emperor with his status as a subject and formally begin a confrontation in the court. Such a lively scene was something that was hard to come by in 10 years. It was a must-see. With such a joyous mood, they couldn't help but urge the coachmen and servants to go faster, faster, faster. Why did he have to hurry? Because in addition to the drama in the court, there was also the foreplay. In the past 2 days, the love affair between General Shinsei and Empress Tensei had caused a great uproar. Everyone knew that after Commander of War returned to the capital, he had launched a storm-like love attack on His Highness Empress. He had even boldly confessed his love in front of His Majesty. Although His Highness Empress had been avoiding the other party, he could not avoid the court meeting. As important officials of the court, the two of them had to attend the court meeting on time. This meant that the two of them would inevitably bump into each other at the palace gates. Again, it would be a waste not to take a look. But they were wrong. Although His Highness Empress and General Shinsei would bump into each other, it would not be in front of the palace gates. Under the moonlight, a figure dashed through the wide and flat streets of the imperial capital. This figure ran in a hurry and let out a muffled groan, as if this was not enough to show his anxiety. He wore brand new clothes embroidered with flying needles and embroidered with mythical beasts. Golden threads flowed with battle patterns. The tailoring was close to the body. It was both beautiful and practical, and set off a heroic temperament. This was his new uniform, just issued yesterday. He had half a fried dough stick in his mouth. It looked like he was going to be late, so much so that he did not have a proper breakfast. It was like he was a transfer student on the first day of school. Oh, in fact, this was how he acted. In short, he was running in a hurry. According to the usual plot, with the fried dough stick in his mouth, he would meet the woman of destiny at the next corner. Then, he would be unable to stop in time and would uncontrollably bump into her under the influence of inertia. Yes, it was like a meeting of fate. As if it was fate when a young man, who was about to be late, rushed to the next intersection, a luxuriously decorated carriage coincidentally appeared. The young man let out an insincere scream and then used his Iron Mountain lean, as if Mount Tai was moving horizontally, to crash into the carriage. With a bang, the back half of the carriage was directly smashed into fine wood shavings. Countless fragments rose into the air like mist, floating into the dark sky. The galloping horse fell to the ground, and the front half of the carriage flew forward. The coachman was thrown by the huge force and immediately fainted. A figure jumped out from the broken carriage and floated to the roof of a house by the side of the road. The daredevil who accidentally bumped into the carriage took 2 steps back and sat on the ground. Then, he deliberately spread his legs. However, he was wearing pants, so the other party could not see that he had deliberately changed into strawberry underwear. At this moment, he touched his head and said in a low voice, "Ouch, ouch, ouch, ouch." Empress took a deep breath and looked at Sun Lang, who was sitting on the ground. She coldly said, "What are you doing?" Sun Lang rubbed his head and raised his head in a daze. His eyes lit up, and he pointed at Empress' military uniform and shouted, "Hey, are you also a student of our school? I'm a new transfer student. Look, we're both wearing the same clothes. It looks like a couple's shirt." Empress glared at him and coldly said, "Idiot." Sun Lang curled his lips. "Wow, you old women really don't have any romantic selves. I think this kind of encounter is very classic. Why don't we change it next time?" On a slope full of green foxtails, I accidentally dropped the guillotine I was wearing on my head, and it rolled all the way to your feet. Ridiculous. Empress shouted, "What are you doing here?" Sun Lang smiled foolishly and said, "I want to go to school with you." Empress coldly sneered. Clumsy alienation. Trust me. Sun Lang maintained his sitting position and looked up at the high and mighty Her Highness the Emperor's concubine. His eyes were a bit blurred. "If I really wanted to drive a wedge between you father and daughter, you would have to pick up a knife and cut each other the next day." Empress sneered. "Oh, then why don't you do that?" "Because I love you." "I'm just kidding." Sun Lang smiled and waved his hand. Then his eyes became sharp. "Because I want to see your eyes full of regret and despair when you wake up from being kept in the dark." Empress's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "What? You don't understand? Can't you see? I want you to be suspicious because of this random sentence that I made up. In the end, you will fall out with your father. This is a plot to drive a wedge between us. What, is it still clumsy?" Empress was startled at first, then became furious and turned to leave. Sun Lang said lazily, "Did I let you go?" The Emperor's concubine cast a sidelong glance at him. "Do I need your permission to go anywhere?" "No, of course not. I can't control where you want to go." Sun Lang raised his right hand and made a very obscene gesture of digging. He chuckled. "But I can make you unable to go anywhere." Empress's expression changed, and she cursed angrily. "Shameless." Sun Lang nodded happily. "To deal with a treacherous official like you, there is no need to talk about righteousness. Okay, let's not talk nonsense. Your Highness Empress, let's make a deal." Empress flatly refused. "In your dreams, I won't make a deal with a treacherous official." Sun Lang nodded his head repeatedly. "That's indeed the case." Her Highness Empress concubine is of noble character and unquestionable integrity, unparalleled loyalty and righteousness. She would never make a deal with a treacherous official like me. It's just that I'm a bit curious. Why didn't your Highness Empress bring any attendants and guards to the court with only a coachman who doesn't know martial arts? Are you so confident in the security of the capital? Or are you worried that there will be too many people? He chuckled and said, "Well, after all, your father is a great emperor. Even the most loyal guard can be your father's informant, right? What if I suddenly rush out and tell you something that isn't true, and it reaches His Majesty's ears. Although His Majesty isn't fooled by my sowing of discord, it won't be a good thing, right? General Tensei looked at him coldly. Don't look at me like that. You have to know that I have been merciful to you. Although Sun Lang's voice was very soft, it was exceptionally clear when it entered the Empress concubine's ears. Back at the Imperial Ancestral Temple, I'll let you off. Otherwise, you would have already thrown yourself into my embrace, your eyes filled with yearning, your heart rippling with love, expressing your deep love. Although he said such vulgar words, his tone was very serious. There was a sharp light in the calmness. You have taken benefits from me, Sun Lang, so you have to spit out something, right? Empress looked at him. The smile on her lips slowly widened, and her face was full of sarcasm. She said, Sun Lang, do you think you have me? Sun Lang tilted his head. Or else. Empress reached out and clapped her hands twice. The sound of clapping spread out through the night. A moment later, there was the sound of horse hooves. A group of people and horses were rushing over. Sun Lang frowned slightly. Who is coming? Your subordinates can't stop me. You should know this. So who are these people? Are they imperial censors or something? Empress just sneered. Seeing this, Sun Lang lay down on the ground and shouted, Oh my, someone from Tensei province has bumped into someone. Empress looked down at this guy from above, as if she was looking at a pile of garbage. The sound of horse hooves approached. Empress's voice was full of evil intentions. She shouted, Why aren't you helping General Shunsei up? Yes, sir, they replied in unison. Sun Lang heard this voice and instinctively trembled. Their replies were uniform and crisp. Obviously, they all came from the mouths of young ladies. He tilted his head and saw several dozens of silver-armored war boots with white cloud patterns stepping on the ground. The young, beautiful, valiant female warriors of the Heavenly Policy Mansion strode their long and slender legs towards him. As if it was a conditioned reflex, Sun Lang jumped up like a carp. Before he could say anything, Empress, who was standing on the roof, said, Look carefully. This is the famous commander of war, Jia Ying, who defeated the Sky Demon. He is the current general of Shunsei, Sun Lang. He is an indomitable hero and an unparalleled general of the Empire. You little girls usually admire him and want to see him. Today, your wish is granted. What are you still standing here for? Following the Emperor's concubine's command, the dozens of white-skinned and beautiful young ladies wearing battle armor immediately revealed bright and beautiful smiles. They looked like fanatical fans, and a fragrant wind blew in his face. They warmly called out, General, and surrounded Sun Lang from all directions. General Shunsei suddenly understood Empress's evil intentions. He didn't expect that this woman would use such an evil method to deal with him. She was simply too inhumane. He dodged the siege of the women and confessed to Empress affectionately, Ah, my love, is this your test? You're the only one in my heart. But Empress saw that he was pretending at a glance. She sneered, Pretend, keep pretending. Sun Lang stopped pretending. He flew into the air in anger and rushed toward Empress. Do you think you have one? The Emperor concubine faced Sun Lang's demonic claws and quickly said expressionlessly, Do you want to be surrounded by countless girls who admire you after court? Do you want to be chased by the little princesses in the palace for hugs? Do you want to be surrounded by beautiful palace maids and talented dancers at the imperial banquet? Sun Lang's evil claws hovered above Empress's head. The two looked at each other. Empress showed a proud expression. Sun Lang stared and said, Do you want to urinate in public in the Golden Palace? Do you want to secretly bite your finger in public? Do you want to be recorded by historians as your most charming moment? Empress snorted. Do you want to become a big pervert who cultivates evil skills? Sun Lang frowned and said coldly, Do you still want to be the crown prince? It was a deadlock. The two fell into silence. After a while, Sun Lang sneered. So you came up with such a method? Empress said coldly, You were lucky to ambush me here. Otherwise, after the imperial court, I will arrange my plan and ruin your reputation. Sun Lang said with a smile, How do you know that I am not here to test your conspiracy? Empress said indifferently, "Just be stubborn. I understand your urgency to save face." Sun Lang did not change his expression. His tone became playful. "By the way, I have another question. If I did not appear before, would you have arranged some evil plan? If that's the case, does your father know about this plan? Did he cooperate with you?" Empress's expression changed slightly. "Well, it seems that you haven't told your daddy yet. You have also entered puberty. You are estranged from your daddy and have your own little secrets." Sun Lang was always able to keenly discover the enemy's flaws, whether it was a favorable or unfavorable situation. It's obviously such an important plan. With your father's cooperation, it would be foolproof. But why didn't you tell your imperial father? Why didn't you tell him about this? Oh, I see. You. Empress shouted coldly. "Shut up." Sun Lang nodded happily. "It seems that we are about to reach a new consensus." Empress's expression was cold, but she did not refute. After a moment of silence, she shouted in a low voice, "Don't use that dirty ability to attack me. In exchange, I will not use this method to hurt you." Chapter 944. In the faraway Earth, Sun Lang's hometown, there was such a thing. It was a concept and a system that maintained a shaky peace, suppressing the all-out war that could easily be triggered by sensitive issues such as ideology, national interests, religious beliefs, etc., so that Earth would not casually enter a radiation instance dungeon. The name of this thing was the Mutual Assured Destruction Mechanism. In other words, the most powerful countries in the world all had the terrible power to destroy civilization, and if any of them went berserk, it would be enough to make the entire human world suffer. The best part was that under the premise that the major powers all had the ability to go berserk, no one would dare to go berserk. This was called checks and balances. That was the irony of history and civilization. The weapons with the most destructive power, the ultimate weapons created by human beings that could destroy themselves, the brutal weapons that were deployed in the major launch platforms and aimed at the settlements of human beings 24 hours a day, and once activated, they could easily extinguish the fire of civilization. Yet, they had maintained the basic peace of the world in the decades after their birth. No one knew if Oppenheimer and Einstein would cry or laugh if they knew this in the underworld. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that Sun Lang realized that he seemed to have fallen into this kind of balance. Originally, although the great strength of health was a curse that had troubled him for a long time, in the current situation, it had instead become a double-edged sword. With this terrifying power, he could unreasonably wave the fountain magic wand at the heavenly strategies princess, causing the noble princess to tremble in fear at the mere mention of his name. After all, Her Highness Empress wanted to be Empress, and Sun Lang only needed to touch her gently, and no matter where he touched, the noble Empress would let out a moving moan, her face flushed, her legs rubbing together, her eyes filled with lust, and a river of spring water flowing down. Encountering this kind of thing in public was no different from playing with a vibrator. Furthermore, Her Highness, the Empress concubine, had the intention to compete for the position of crown prince. Losing her composure and losing face like this was a devastating blow to her reputation and ambitions. How could she still want to be the emperor after losing so much face? Therefore, with this deterrent weapon, Sun Lang had maintained a huge advantage over Empress ever since he wreaked havoc in Tensei province, causing her to be at a loss and even flee. Naturally, he was quite pleased with himself and never tired of it. After all, as a good man, as a man with self-control, as a man who respected women, even if he had awakened this cursed ability, even if he had endured the pain of not being able to touch women for the past 2 years, Sun Lang had never turned into a pervert. He almost never used this ability to tease women. Instead, he always kept a decent distance from women. Therefore, Empress was an exception. It was super fun. Sun Lang, who had discovered a new world and a new way to play, had been thinking about how to torture Her Highness Empress when he had nothing to do. He had already developed various ways to play with her. He even wanted to test if his inner strength and thousand-mile telepathy could develop a similar effect. In this way, he could play with vibrator and phone games. However, good times did not last long. Now, he was shocked to find that this woman had actually come up with a countermeasure, a mechanism to ensure mutual destruction. Touching the empress concubine in front of everyone could destroy this woman's political future. If the emperor knew that he had a lethal weapon against the empress concubine, then the empress concubine's importance would plummet. This was the weapon Sun Lang used to deter empress. But this woman was obviously not easy to deal with. The great protective power had a flaw. Its most fatal and the core problem that troubled Sun Lang the most was that this power could not be controlled and could not be sent out at will. It was like a fix buff. Status, eagerly anticipating. Effect, become the most gentlemanly man in the world. Note, don't dream. Don't even think about it. That was the gist of it. Empress obviously also discovered this point, and then launched a counterattack plan based on it. Sun Lang could not control his curse ability, which meant that all the women he came into contact with would experience the phenomenon of water elemental stripping and produce an uncontrollable physiological impulse. In the empire where martial arts flourished, such a phenomenon was not difficult to explain. After all, the world of martial arts was full of rapists. If there were rapists, there would be legends of unscientific aphrodisiac that could immediately turn a woman into a slut after eating it. If there were such things, then there would naturally be obscene techniques that could use yin to supplement yang and seduce women. This was where the biggest problem lay. Sun Lang's ability was very easy to be regarded as an extremely obscene technique. What was worse was that with this man's consistent personality and conduct, people who were familiar with him would not doubt his motivation and rationality to practice the technique. As for why he could not send out at will, it could also be explained by his incomparably thirsty heart and his unparalleled martial arts cultivation. Of course, after he practiced it, he found that it was extremely effective. In excitement, he continued to practice in seclusion and deduced the technique from 9 levels to 18 levels. Then he practiced it to the perfect level in one go, and finally found that he had overdone it. It could be perfectly explained, and everyone would believe it. Everyone. Damn it. This was the most fatal weakness. With Sun Lang's martial arts, it was easy for him to make a fool of Empress. But after Empress made a fool of himself, he would fight to the death. If he harshly accused Sun Lang of practicing the evil technique, Sun Lang would not be able to refute. Going one step further, for example, arranging women and setting up a plan so that Sun Lang would be forced to come into contact with other women to cause unforeseen events. They could also beat the general of divine strategies into a pervert with evil intentions. TSK. To ensure mutual destruction. Sun Lang could destroy the Empress concubine's political future, but the Empress concubine could also destroy Sun Lang's reputation. In this kind of situation where both sides perished together, the fragile balance began. No, it was even an exchange of offense and defense, and the situation was reversed. Since the window paper was already exposed and the problem was made clear, then when Sun Lang once again made a move against the Empress concubine and humiliated her in front of everyone, the Empress concubine could still accuse Sun Lang in a life and death struggle. And if Her Highness the Empress concubine took the initiative and secretly plotted against Sun Lang, even if Sun Lang wanted to touch her out of humiliation after she succeeded, it wouldn't matter. It wasn't that Her Highness the Empress concubine wasn't decent. It was that the general of divine strategies was too perverted. Everyone had the right to punish him. Therefore, this meant that Empress had changed from a passive situation to a strategic initiative. However, Sun Lang still held the greatest advantage, and that was his martial prowess. Even if the Empress concubine's scheme succeeded, he could still flip the table and smash everyone's heads. After all, this was a world where the strong were respected. The advantage of having power was that no matter when or where, no matter what the situation was, you would always have the last and most effective trump card to play, causing your opponents to hesitate in taking action. But if things reached that point, there was basically no winner. So, was it still a check and balance? Sun Lang and Empress concubine stared at each other. In this instant, countless thoughts flashed through their minds. No matter if it was Sun Lang's agreement or Empress Concubine's agreement, the two of them didn't believe a single word of it. After all, the trust between them had long collapsed. Right now, they were enemies that wouldn't rest until one of them died. The Emperor's concubine had made countless decisions, abandonments, and sacrifices to reach this step. Sun Lang carried the lives of several people and the future of many people back here. No one would compromise, no one would give in, no one would be soft-hearted, and no one would make a mistake. But it was still a little funny. Sun Lang suddenly rolled his eyes. Look at you, look at you. Where's your mindset, your breadth of mind, and your bearing? You actually used such a lowly method to attack your political opponents and fight between factions in the court. Empress said coldly, "Shameless bastard, you actually turned around and made a false countercharge." Sun Lang straightened his neck and said, "I'm also a barbarian. It's natural that I'm lowly. If I'm lowly, are you also lowly?" Empress said angrily, "You're the lowly one." In terms of bickering, even 10 empresses were no match for Sun Lang. If it was in the past, such a quarrel would have lasted for at least an hour. But as time passed, things remained the same, and people had changed. Everything could no longer return to the past. Although Sun Lang wanted to retort, his mood from the past could not return. After a moment of melancholy, Sun Lang suddenly woke up. What am I thinking? He laughed at himself in his heart, and his slightly dazed heart became firm again. Humans were not plants and could not be emotionless. Memories were stored in the heart, and occasionally surfaced and stirred up slight waves. It was human nature, but that was all. So he showed a gentle smile. Empress saw the familiar face and felt a chill in her heart. She said defensively, "What do you want to do?" Sun Lang said in a low voice, "The Three Kingdoms." Empress heard him talk about the Three Kingdoms story. Of course, it was the kind that had been magically modified. It was a new version that combined fantasy, mecha warfare, the end of the world, hot-bloodedness, and the dream of the Three Kingdoms. She was shocked. "What?" Sun Lang pointed at her. "You." Then he pointed at himself. "Me." Then he pointed at the imperial city. "Your father." The Three Kingdoms. Empress was startled at first, and then she sneered. "Are you trying to sow discord again?" Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "Sow discord? Don't you have selfish motives? Are you on the same side as your father? Does he trust you completely? Do you trust him completely? Do you obey him purely out of loyalty and affection?" "There is no affection in the royal family. I was the one who told you that being with the emperor is like being with a tiger." Empress said coldly, "Everyone has selfish motives. That was also what you said. But in the face of a great traitor like you, I naturally have to sincerely cooperate with my father to fight against the enemy." Sun Lang laughed. "When your father summoned you before, he must have asked you why you ran away in the imperial ancestral temple. Did you tell him the truth? Did you tell your father that Sun Lang is a great pervert? He touched you casually, and you want to take it all over him so that you can't do anything to him. Did you tell your father the truth? You didn't, right? You definitely didn't, because if you said so, you would be useless, including now. You are very smart. You have thought of a way to counter me. Such a good way. Did you tell your father? With his help, the plan will go more smoothly, right?" Empress gritted her teeth and said, "I will go to the palace and report to my father this time." Sun Lang shook his head and smiled. "No, you won't. You won't do this, because even if you tell your father, it will be useless. Even if you and your father can perfectly carry out this plan and greatly damage my reputation, I still have a last resort. If he dares to slander me in front of the Golden Palace, I dare to blow his head in front of the Golden Palace." Empress said angrily, "How dare you? There are many talents in the court and countless masters. Do you think you will succeed? Do you really think you are invincible in the world?" Sun Lang smiled. "Whether or not I am invincible, whether or not I can do it, is not important. What is important is that your father, the emperor, will be afraid. Even if I only have a 10% chance of killing him, he will not dare to take the risk. He is old, and he has more scruples. The decision of the battle of the great desolate mountain has already greatly exhausted his courage, and the countless hidden dangers and consequences of that battle have greatly diminished his spirit. In other words, our old Li is no longer the same. He looked at the emperor's concubine, his eyes deep and gloomy. The emperor's concubine saw even more inside information and secrets from those eyes, but she also knew that the other party wouldn't reveal anything to her. If you observe carefully, if you think about it carefully, you will find that your father is no longer the monarch with great talent and bold vision. He thinks about this and that, but he doesn't have the slightest grandeur of a monarch. When dealing with a traitor like me, he actually has his hands tied and feet tied. He doesn't have the decisive and ruthless means. Empress heard this and said angrily, "Isn't that because of you?" "It doesn't matter. What I did doesn't matter." Sun Lang pointed at his heart and smiled. "The crux of the problem is that in your father's heart, there is no world. So when facing a traitor like me, he can't defeat the enemy with the mind and spirit of the ruler of the world. That's why he was fooled by me. A real monarch should be able to recognize the danger and future troubles contained in me and fight with the decisiveness of a hero, instead of being timid and delaying." "Then why do you think he is delaying? What does he want to do?" Empress's expression did not change, but her eyes could not help but waver. However, she realized that Sun Lang was looking at her with a trace of pity in his eyes. General Tensei said coldly, "What are you looking at?" Sun Lang faintly said, "You want to be the emperor, and your imperial father will do his best to nurture you. Facing me, the two of you are grasshoppers on the same rope. You must cooperate sincerely, and you must join hands to face the enemy. If this is what you think, then you're gravely mistaken. When you stand below the imperial steps, facing me with the identity of the emperor's successor, partner, and guardian, I suggest you turn around and look at the way your imperial father looks at you." His words were full of meaning, and his tone was even more mysterious. Perhaps it was because of the heavy night dew. The empress concubine suddenly felt a gloomy chill. She shouted in a low voice, "What are you trying to do?" Sun Lang showed a smile that Empress was very familiar with. "Of course, I want to drive a wedge between you and your father." He smiled. "Little fool." Empress was stunned, but Sun Lang still smiled. "Then let's go back to the tripartite balance. I hope you still remember the story I told you. The tripartite balance, Dong Yuwu, Lu Wei, and Cao Cao, is just the general trend. The alliance is not firm. As the strength changes, the situation will change. The boundary between allies and enemies is actually very blurry." Empress's suspicion disappeared. The woman raised her eyebrows, and her tone became a little excited. Her voice was full of mockery. "You mean, you want me to cooperate with you to fight against my father? Could it be that your next step is to reconcile with me and help me ascend to the throne?" Sun Lang said lightly, "I think you are mistaken. The alliance between Sun Quan and Lu Wei was never firm. The reason why they stood together was because Cao Wei's threat was big enough." "What does big enough mean?" "It's Cao Cao who wants to kill Lu Wei and Sun Quan together. It's also because of this that the two can put down their disagreements and conflicts and fight side by side. Do you understand? Because I want to see the look of regret and despair in your eyes after you've been kept in the dark all this time and realize that you're about to die." The empress concubine suddenly thought of what Sun Lang had said before. When he said those words, Sun Lang's eyes were imprinted in her heart. His eyes were sharp, full of killing intent and hatred. Such a gaze pierced her heart, but at the same time, it made her calm. She did not regret the choice she made. Time could not be reversed, and the past could not be turned back. Hatred and killing intent were human nature. What she cared about was what Sun Lang said. This made her feel uncertain. She did not know if this was a simple plan to drive a wedge between them, or, thinking of her father who was far away in the imperial city, looking down on the world, she felt a chill in her heart. However, her expression was still cold. "Yes, Mr. Liu Bei. Before defeating Cao Cao, you were already thinking about taking over Jingzhou. How can I be at ease to fight against Cao Cao with you?" No matter what doubts she had in her heart, she would not show it. She could not give Sun Lang an opportunity to take advantage of her. Sun Lang only smiled. He waved his hand, and leaped into the night sky. You still don't understand. But whatever. I've said enough today. We're going to be late. I'll go first. Empress subconsciously wanted to stop him. However, Sun Lang's martial arts were unparalleled in the world. He wanted to leave. In an instant, he turned into a clear shadow and disappeared into the deep night of the imperial city. She looked in the direction where Sun Lang disappeared and felt an inexplicable throbbing in her heart. The feeling of uneasiness, the feeling of doubt, the story Sun Lang told her, her own doubts, the fact that there was no familial love in the imperial family, whether her father, who had always been unfathomable, was scheming something behind her back, and whether Sun Lang knew any of these things. She did not know these things. For a moment, Her Highness Empress felt waves of irritation. A tripartite confrontation. What does it mean? Joining forces with Liu Bei and Cao Cao? The same threat? Cao Cao wanted to unify the world, so he had to defeat Liu Bei and Sun Quan. The latter two could not, so they could only abandon their former enmity and fight side by side. Father's enemy is him. Why would he attack me? I'm his daughter. He also knows my loyalty and patience. I'm his most trusted successor. In the night wind, Her Highness Empress's mind was racing, but she could not think of a reason. Sun Lang, who was walking in the night, had a calm expression. A tripartite confrontation. For Liu Bei and Sun Quan, the biggest threat was the powerful Cao Wei in the north. In the face of such an enemy, they could only temporarily put aside their previous disagreements and work together to maintain the balance between the north and the south. However, such a balance and alliance was fragile. Contradictions between Sun Quan and Liu Bei were rampant. As long as an external enemy instigated a little, internal strife would result. For example, the death of Guan Yu and Liu Bei's failure to conquer Wu. Foolish woman. Sun Lang's lips curled into a Sun-Ran sneer. You don't even know who is Cao Cao, who is Sun Quan, who is Liu Bei. Do you still not understand who Liu Bei is? However, it doesn't matter if you don't understand. I will make you understand sooner or later. Just like Guan Yu and Sun Quan, they would definitely fight. The plan had been set a long time ago. There was no kinship in the royal family, and it was easy to drive a wedge between them. On a cold night in the capital, after a brief encounter, confrontation, and conversation, the two youngest and most famous ministers of the Hoda Empire parted ways and walked further and further away. The Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain 2 years ago had shattered all the warmth and affection. From that moment on, only hatred remained. There was only complete hostility. There was only an enemy that would not rest until one of them died. However, Empress suddenly came back to her senses in the night wind. Wait, she was clearly the one who had the upper hand and forced this guy who was jumping around happily to the corner. How could she let him run away so easily after showing off? It was as if she had lost for a while. General Shansei, who was galloping away, came back to his senses and remembered something. F asterisk CK, 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 F asterisk CK. Chapter 945. It was an honor that had existed since ancient times to be praised without fame, to be able to enter the imperial court without being rushed, and to be able to walk with a sword in the palace. With the change of dynasties and the evolution of the times, this honor gradually became a formality. For example, the so-called to be able to wear a sword to the palace meant that one could bring a weapon to the palace without taking off their shoes. However, with the reformation of the imperial court, the kneeling ceremony was abolished. Ministers did not need to kneel in the imperial court. The floor of the Golden Palace was also changed from wood to stone. Everyone had to stand and listen during the imperial court. The rule of removing one's shoes in the ancestral temple and the palace had long disappeared. It was the same with the sword. Originally, officials were required to remove their weapons when attending court. This was for the sake of the emperor's safety. However, since the birth of the emperor's weapon hundreds of years ago, this marvelous weapon had become the most powerful source of power for martial artists. It was connected to the divine soul and connected to the bloodline. It contained unfathomable and mysterious power. Compared to it, ordinary weapons were just a pile of scrap metal. The rules of the court that prohibited officials from carrying weapons had also turned to the emperor's weapon. Therefore, the honor of being able to wear a sword to the palace had basically become a formality. It was seen as a kind of favor and trust from the emperor to a certain minister. Of course, no matter how much the emperor trusted and favored the minister, he could not bring the imperial army to the imperial court. The weapons that he could wear were limited to ordinary iron. This was not only for the emperor's personal safety, but also for the harmony of the imperial court. After all, in the imperial court, black iron was an official. Between the emperor and the emperor, the fierce men ate the salary. The fierce and violent people were aggressive in the imperial court. The brave and fierce people were all in charge of the government. They often wanted to turn the golden palace into ruins and make the innocent suffer. Usually, they would fight for no reason. If they brought the imperial army with them, it would be terrible. In order to prevent the scale and consequences of the fights from escalating, the ministers were forbidden to bring the imperial army to the imperial court. Even the important ministers who had the privilege of being able to wear a sword to the palace were not allowed to bring the imperial army with them. They could just use an ordinary sword to show off. This was to prevent them from taking out the imperial army during a fight. Everyone would not be able to hold them back. This was already a well-thought-out rule and etiquette. However, General, the voice of the censor, who was responsible for monitoring the words and actions of the officials, trembled slightly. They were equivalent to the disciplinary committee. When they were waiting in line for the morning court, they would monitor back and forth to see if anyone's red scarf was not tied properly, if anyone was not wearing their school uniform properly, and even if they were talking, laughing, and spitting on the ground. Now, a friend of the censor squeezed out a formal smile and said weakly to the important official who had just squeezed his way to the front row, "You are." Sun Lang smiled politely at him. "What's wrong?" The imperial censor who spoke was famous for his eloquence in the court. When he scolded people, he was like a surging river. However, at this moment he was stuttering. The scene in front of him was beyond his comprehension. He asked, What are you doing?" Sun Lang lowered his head and looked at his court uniform. "This uniform was sent by the Ministry of Rights yesterday. Is there any problem? Although I was hit hard by General Tensei's luxurious car, it doesn't seem to be damaged." "Oh, right. Speaking of which, you're the censor, right? I want to report to you that General Tensei rode his horse on the street." The censor pointed at Sun Lang's right hand and was about to cry. I'm talking about this. Sun Lang suddenly understood and showed an even brighter smile. Sun Lang, General of Shunsei, have been bestowed by His Majesty to be able to wear a sword to the palace. I have to carry a weapon with me. He waved the two-handed siege sword that was as long as a snake spear on his shoulder. He smiled like a child who was the best in martial arts in the world. The officials behind him were silent. Everyone silently looked at the figure at the front. Under the dark night, in front of the fire in the palace, a sharp giant sword was pointed at the sky. Not long ago, they saw General Shunsei jogging alone. As he ran, he knocked his forehead and stuck out his tongue, saying things like, "Oh no, I'm almost late. Hee." Halfway through, he shouted, "Oh no, I forgot to bring my battleship slicing blade." Then, under everyone's gaze, the general jumped into the endless darkness. A moment later, he ran back with a giant sword that could kill 1/3 of the officials of the empire with just 3 swings. Everyone was dumbfounded. For a moment, they were shocked and amused. The empire had been established for hundreds of years. There were many officials who had the honor of being able to wear a sword to the palace. However, everyone at most carried a ceremonial sword for show. They had never heard of any official carrying a heavy weapon like a mace, a crescent blade, an iron halberd, or a mountain-splitting axe. Damn it! The censor was tongue-tied for a moment, but he could not say anything. After all, the ceremonial officials who set the rules of etiquette for the imperial court did not set the standards or restrictions for carrying weapons. Or rather, they did not expect that after hundreds of years, there would be a powerful official or general who would carry a giant sword that could cut the gate of heaven influence in half. It was simply poisonous. Among the crowd, Di Huaying and Bao Shiren stood together. They had been talking before. Di Huaying said in a low voice, "Eldest senior sister has already left Sixth Fan School. Father Hui has also resigned 2 years ago. They're not in the list of officials and cannot participate in the imperial court. However, there was a decree from the palace last night. They are now waiting in the palace. Junior brother, cheer up. Today's imperial court meeting will not be simple." As he said this, he signaled to the front with his eyes. Although the crowd in front blocked the sight of the two people who were not very tall, the extremely long, heavy sword at the front was like a pointing mark on the head of the Hagura bell. It clearly indicated that the flashy and arrogant Master Sun Lang is here. Bao Shiren snorted heavily. He did not like Sun Lang at all. Reckless, impetuous, bossy, independent, not at all like an important official. Di Huaying smiled and said, "Junior brother, you're here again." Bao Shiren said coldly, "Isn't that right, senior brother? He is always so capricious and does things as he pleases. Every time he does something sensational, he does not have the slightest sign of composure. In this way, those who want to rely on him and those who want to cooperate with him will all shrink back." Di Huaying laughed and said, "Isn't this a good thing for you, junior brother?" Bao Shiren was startled at first, then nodded and said, "He is the enemy of the country. He comes with ill intentions. Anyone who wants to shake the country is my enemy. As my enemy, it is indeed good news that he is so impetuous. However, this does not prevent me from despising his behavior and mocking his behavior." Di Huaying shook his head and said, "Junior brother, you are wrong to think this way. In my opinion, the way the general acts is not frivolous or impetuous. He is constantly breaking the rules." Looking at the eye-catching, huge blade, Di Huaying looked as if he was looking at a sharp and invincible divine weapon. He said, laughing and scolding and winning every battle, ignoring the rules as if they are nothing but cutting through bamboo. "Junior brother, you are loyal and simple. You see the general as your enemy, so you don't like him at all. However, have you ever thought about how others will feel when they see him, who speaks and acts without scruples but can suppress the imperial court?" Bao Shiren was shocked. He was not stupid. Di Huaying sighed softly. He is a very difficult and terrifying enemy. And the worst news is that after the morning court, the four of us will have to face him directly. In the whispered conversation, the censor still could not find a clear law enforcement basis, so he could not do anything with the general's battleship slicing blade. This was also the benefit of power and power. If a small official made a mistake, no censor would have the leisure to reason with him. He would just reprimand him and write it down in a small notebook. In the blink of an eye, he would be criticized to death. However, it was not the same for General Shunsei. If the general was polite and reasonable to you, you had to be honest and reasonable to him. If you were unreasonable to him, he would let you see how unreasonable he was. After waiting for a while, General Tensei came late. When Her Highness Empress saw the battleship slicing blade on Sun Lang's shoulder, she was also shocked. Then she laughed coldly and did not say anything. She maintained a suitable distance from Sun Lang. The two did not interact at all. This greatly disappointed the officials who were waiting to see a fierce battle. Sun Lang carried his legal sword and occasionally spoke a few words with the important officials beside him. They were all people he was familiar with. Most of the important officials in the court had a calm expression and did not smile, treating him as if he was nothing. When the political battle reached this level, it involved the lives of hundreds and thousands of people. Many people had not made up their minds. Many people were still watching from the sidelines, and many people were not ready to take sides. Before this, It was better to have less contact. After a while, it was finally 5 o'clock. It was time to go to court. As the censor called out a greeting, the guards inside responded in unison. The huge gate of heaven influence slowly opened. The ancient imperial city announced its awakening. The officials waiting quietly outside the gate of heaven influence were about to enter the court one by one to pay their respects to the emperor and participate in the court meeting. The censor was about to lead the officials into the court when he discovered an even more serious problem. It was a problem of order. The gate was only so big. There was a difference in order of entry. First-rank officials walked in front of second-rank officials. This was something that could not be more normal. Among the first-rank officials, who would walk in front? Originally, this problem of order had been solved long ago. It could be based on seniority. But this was the first time that General Shansei had entered the court. In terms of military exploits, reputation, and official position, he was the best choice. As a famous official of the age, where would he be placed? It had to be known that this was not a small matter. But what made the imperial censors let out a sigh of relief was that the general displayed his style and displayed an extremely humble and good quality. He carried his battleship's slicing blade and flashed behind Her Highness the Empress concubine. He smiled at the surrounding first-rank officials and said, "I naturally have to walk behind my family, sure." The others did not hear the filth in these words. Hearing these words, they all responded with kind, joking, or mischievous smiles. They thought that Sun Lang said ladies first and took the opportunity to take advantage of Empress. And Her Highness Empress took a deep breath. Only she heard the true meaning of Sun Lang's words. First-rank military officials went first, followed by first-rank civil officials. Empress wanted to show respect for the wise and humble, so she waited until the last to walk. And Sun Lang was standing behind her. Behind. God damn it. She thought about how this despicable and shameless pervert was right behind her, and how his eyes were probably looking around. What was worse was that as long as the other party poked her gently with his hand, something terrible would happen. The feeling of the faucet being held in someone else's hand was very uncomfortable. Sun Lang's voice drilled into her ears. "If I poke you gently, will you fall out with me?" The Emperor's concubine felt the muscles on her back as she coldly said, "Guess." Sun Lang said, "Then guess where my hand is." Empress was silent for a moment. Her body suddenly leaned back. Sun Lang was startled and subconsciously shrank back. General Tensei lightly said, "Huh." Sun Lang gritted his teeth. "Hey, we're getting better." The Emperor's concubine didn't say anything and walked forward. Excluding the nobles, there were a total of 10 to 21st rank officials in the court. Very quickly, it was their turn. Sun Lang humped twice and immediately followed. When the guards received the news, they were mentally prepared. But when they saw General Shansei walk in with a serious expression while carrying a giant sword, they still had mixed feelings. The visual impact made them speechless for a moment. The feelings of the many courtiers following behind the general were even more indescribable. They lined up and silently entered the palace, but their eyes followed the constantly swaying sword in front of them. Even though the courtiers were all skilled martial artists of the present age, and more than half of them were meritorious heroes who had been on the Tianyuan battlefield, the swaying sword was in the hands of a madman called Sun Lang. This made many people tremble with fear. Along the way from the gate of heaven influence to the 5 gates of the emperor, there were palace guards all along the way. Along the way, there were eunuchs and palace maids passing by. There were even young princes and princesses who came out to take a peek. Under everyone's astonished gazes, the general of divine strategies carried a huge superweapon and walked through the streets. Furthermore, he looked around without any shyness or embarrassment. His skin was so thick that he could receive an emperor weapon with his face. The Hall of Politics was in sight. Walking through the vast square and ascending the long stairs, the sky was slightly bright, and the stars were still bright. The highest meeting place of the empire was right in front of them. This was the highest power center of Hudu territory and the biggest stage of the country. Sun Lang followed behind the emperor's concubine and walked up the long and wide steps. This was the first time he had come here. This was his final battlefield and stage. It had been 8 years. Until today, he finally stood at the highest point of this country. He had come here to do some things that he had to do. His heart was in turmoil. Sun Lang said in a low voice, "I've finally come here with you." Empress in front of him seemed not to hear him. His steps were still steady, and his back was calm, just like before. It was strange yet familiar. It was a pity that he was 2 years late. It was a pity that things had changed. Everything had gone against his best dream. He had already woken up from the dream. "Now," he said, "get out of the way." The sharp tip that was almost solid pierced towards the Emperor's concubine's back. As a martial artist, General Tian Su's instincts allowed him to quickly dodge. The sound of the wind rang in his ears as a familiar, yet unfamiliar figure flitted past him and walked forward. The ministers who were walking at the front all sensed something and turned their heads back. An extremely dense will erupted from their backs, containing an incomparable power. That power was so blazing, so indomitable, like a landslide, like a flood, like a raging flame. It condensed into a beam of sword light, slashing out with a roar of anger and unwillingness. It slashed out with the satisfaction of revenge, the helplessness of being used, the sadness of being betrayed. Finally, he relied on his own strength to come here, to accomplish some things. He said, "Excuse me, let me go first this time." The noblest and most powerful first-grade ministers of the empire who were walking at the front opened up a path for them, whether they were willing or forced to do so. Sun Lang's aura at this moment was above everyone else. Sighs rose in the eyes of those who knew, and shock appeared on the faces of those who didn't. The imperial guards standing in front of the palace were responsible for protecting. But when the Shinsei general with a large number of soldiers came closer, the most powerful soldiers were shocked into silence and couldn't say a word. They watched with wide eyes as Sun Lang stepped over the high threshold and walked into the magnificent palace. The emperor had not yet arrived. There were only a few ceremonial officials, eunuchs in the palace doing the final inspection. They saw the Shinsei general enter with a sword and soldiers and were so scared that they trembled. Sun Lang raised his head and looked around at the towering palace. There were 12 pillars, extremely high royal stairs, and a majestic dragon throne. This place was much larger than the Golden Room in the Forbidden City. "So, this is what it looks like." His voice was very calm. He walked forward a few steps and asked a eunuch, "Where is my seat?" The poor guy seemed to have thought of something and looked at Sun Lang with fear and trepidation. 3 seconds later, a look of shock appeared on his face. He unconsciously glanced at the dragon throne, and then his eyes rolled back and he fainted. You guys just listen to rumors and always want to create big news. The sound of footsteps rang out behind him as the officials filed in. They looked at Sun Lang with complicated gazes. Sun Lang turned his head to look at them and tilted his head. Did I do something wrong? Many of the people who were secretly angry were startled when they heard this. It seemed like he didn't do anything wrong. Entering the palace with a sword was originally allowed to carry a sword. The court didn't set a standard, and he wasn't carrying the imperial army. Even if he was carrying a heavy sword, it wouldn't be against the rules. Just now, there wasn't any problem with being the first to enter the palace. He didn't make a lot of noise, didn't show a fierce look, and didn't hurt anyone. He just walked a little faster and was a little faster. But in fact, there wasn't much of a problem. Even if these things were done by a third or even second-rank official, what greeted him would certainly be an earth-shattering amount of documents and criticism. He might even be arrested on the spot. All that greeted him was a strange silence. The officials silently entered the palace and stood in the formation they were familiar with for a long time. Sun Lang smiled at Empress, who was walking over. When the smile fell into the eyes of General Tensei, it revealed an indescribable coldness. He still stood beside Empress. The eunuchs sang the ceremony. The emperor had arrived, and the officials all cheered. Jizun wore a dragon robe and sat on the dragon throne. General Shinsei stood below and looked up. The two people's gazes met. Sun Lang carried the huge sword on his shoulder and smiled at him. It was as if he was carrying a butcher's knife. Chapter 946. The officials cheered, and the emperor took his seat. The eunuch stepped forward and waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. His voice was clear and resounding throughout the court. Since the court meeting has begun, the path for discussion has been opened. Officials, submit a memorial. Bao Shiren raised his head and exchanged glances with Di Huaying in the Ministry of Justice. Then he stepped out of the crowd. I, Bao Shiren, the governor of the capital, have a memorial. The emperor first looked at Sun Lang. General Shansei, who was standing at the front of the military class, looked straight ahead. His expression was calm, and he did not show any unusual behavior. Then he looked at Bao Shiren. At such a young age, he was one of the 3 assistants in the capital. This young man was intelligent, capable, and hot-blooded. He was an official that every emperor liked very much. This kind of official had ideals and did not care about personal gains and losses. He also did not form cliques for selfish ends. He was driven and dared to do things. For the sake of his beliefs and morals, he could disregard the consequences. He could become a sharp blade that could cut through all obstacles in the hands of a wise emperor. The emperor saw Bao Shiren's expression and eyes. He was determined and stubborn. He was intelligent and stupid, shrewd and dull. He did things based on the balance in his heart. He could persevere in investigating the truth of the battle on Dahuang Mountain when Sun Lang disappeared for 2 years. He could also unhesitatingly become enemies with Sun Lang after he returned to the capital. It seemed that his actions were contradictory, but there was a set of unwavering logic in his actions. When Sun Lang's actions and position threatened the stability of the country and the happiness of the people, he did not hesitate to become the enemy of the other party. This was the highest standard of his conduct as a person and as an official. The emperor's gaze swept across the crowd. These people were the helmsmen of the country, the pillars of the court, the people who ruled the country with him, and the so-called loyal officials. However, among the elites of the country, there were too few officials like Bao Shiren. More people paid attention to their own land and the power in their hands. Otherwise, how could this dog be so arrogant? He looked at Sun Lang again. The greatest trader in the history of the empire was now standing on the Golden Palace with an extremely ridiculous giant sword in his hand. He looked down on the imperial power, had no emperor or father, and was extremely arrogant. However, none of the civil and military officials dared to raise any objections. A bunch of selfish and despicable people. The emperor suppressed the anger in his heart and coldly swept his gaze over the officials in the Golden Palace. He wanted to build an unprecedentedly powerful empire. He wanted to be an eternal and immortal emperor. Therefore, he needed loyal and selfless subjects, not these overcautious and indecisive fools. Fortunately, he only needed to endure for a while. That day was not far away. But first, I have to deal with you. Thinking of this, the emperor nodded. The chamberlain who turned around to ask for the emperor's order saw this and loudly said, "Approved." Bao Shiren stepped forward, tidied his clothes, and knelt on the ground. His voice was calm and firm. "This official, the capital governor Bao Shiren, requests your majesty to listen. There are 3 things I want to report. First, Shinsei General Sun Lang led the army to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He gathered his private army in the front and set up a private prison in the back. Not only did he violate the law, but he also disturbed the people's hearts. This official once led the army to question him, but was evaded in the name of military affairs. Today, I will report this matter to the emperor in the court. I hope your majesty will investigate this matter. Second, the fire sword Saint Chi Lianyan died on the streets. Before his death, he had a quarrel with General Shinsei. The inexplicable death of the 7 luminaries' sword saint shook the capital and shocked our allies. Your majesty must investigate this matter. Third, as the ancient saying goes, those in position plan their own affairs. Commander of war Sun Lang fought on the battlefield in the past, and his achievements surpassed the 6 armies. He illuminated Tianyuan and was conferred the title of General Shinsei. His achievements were worthy of his position, but he had no duties. This caused the famous general of the era to wander around the capital, doing nothing. Your Majesty, please investigate this matter carefully. When the officials began to report, they were supposed to report one matter at a time. Bao Shiren had already broken the rules by mentioning 3 matters in one breath, but no one objected because these 3 matters could more or less be considered one matter. It was the matter of Sun Lang. It was the matter of Sun Lang. The Golden Hall was completely silent. Everyone stole glances at Sun Lang, only to see that the general was concentrating on picking at his fingernails. That astonishingly large sword was floating beside him, as if it was being held in the air by an invisible hand. It was like a door was standing beside him. It looked extremely awkward. Even though they were talking about him, he didn't seem to care at all. After a while, the emperor said indifferently, "Beloved subject? Beloved subject, Sun Lang?" Sun Lang turned a deaf ear to it. His eyes were solemn as he held his breath and concentrated on scraping the small thorns sticking out from the side of his fingernails. He was so serious and so forceful that he even scraped a string of sparks on his fingernails. His mouth made strange tisk sounds of impatience and failure. The emperor took a deep breath and said in a heavier voice, "Sun Lang." Shinsei, who was wearing a dark red military uniform, immediately strode out. His posture was ramrod straight. At the same time, a forceful, heavy, and energetic voice boomed out, "Yes." This voice was so abrupt and loud that it made many of the officials tremble in fear. There were even fine rustling sounds in the Golden Hall. This shout even shook off the dust that had accumulated on the roof. The emperor furrowed his brows and said in an unfriendly tone, "I just called you. Didn't you hear?" Sun Lang's face was blank. "I heard," the emperor said coldly. "Then why didn't you answer?" Sun Lang lowered his head to look at himself and felt even more confused. "Didn't I come out to answer?" The emperor's voice became colder and colder. "I was talking about before." Sun Lang's eyes widened. With a face full of shock, he said, "That beloved subject's son was calling me? Beloved subject?" The emperor didn't say anything and looked at him with an even more unfriendly gaze. Sun Lang immediately showed a blushing expression. I'm really sorry, Your Majesty. It was my oversight. I thought Your Majesty didn't like me and wanted me to scram far away. I didn't expect that even this kind of official would still be a beloved subject in Your Majesty's heart. I'm really flattered and moved to tears. I never thought that beloved subject's son was actually calling me. The more the emperor listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. He knew that Sun Lang was mocking him in a roundabout way. In his heart, he was even more displeased. He coldly said, "Now you know that the capital governor's 3 memorials are all related to you. I called you out because I want to hear your opinion." Sun Lang nodded and said sincerely to the emperor, "Thank you for the invitation." The emperor showed an expression of discomfort. After Sun Lang finished speaking, he turned around and looked at Bao Shiren, who was silently kneeling there. He raised his voice and said, "I oppose all of what official Bao said. Even if I disagree, it will be of no help." Bao Shiren said faintly, "Why do you say that, Commander-in-Chief?" Sun Lang smiled. "It's nothing. I just wanted to show off." Official Bao raised his head. Although he was still in a kneeling position, there was an awe-inspiring aura in his eyes. He looked at Sun Lang in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Commander-in-Chief, you are an important official of the military class and a famous general of Tianyuan. Your every move is watched by the court and admired by the world. Therefore, please be careful with your words and actions and be a good example to the other officials." The emperor said faintly, "Beloved subject Bao, stand up and speak." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Bao Shiren stood up nimbly. His gaze was fixed on Sun Lang. Although he was one of the 3 assistants, he was the capital governor of the imperial capital. For him to be able to sit in this position at such a young age, he could be considered to have a prosperous career and a promising future. During his time in office, he was diligent in government affairs and had an excellent reputation. Because of this, the influential officials did not dare to bully him. He was truly a young and capable official. Although the influential officials of the imperial capital did not like him, they had to admit that he was a capable person. However, it was just like how all the young talents of the late Tianyuan era had to face a common shadow. Even if Bao Heizi's future was bright and he was successful and famous, he would still be overshadowed by Sun Lang. In the Golden Hall, the capital governor stared at the Shunsei general without flinching. Just like how he had confronted the influential officials countless times, his gaze was as firm as ever. However, no one thought that he would win, not even himself. But he still stood there because he felt that he had to stand there. Sun Lang smiled. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Just as he had expected, Bao Heizi had chosen hell mode. What a reckless idiot. Since you want to be the Emperor's sword, I'll grant you your wish. General Shunsei said slowly. A few days ago in the Imperial Ancestral Temple, I've already told His Majesty everything. The inside story of the Copper Sparrow Terrace, Qi Lianyin's death, and all sorts of suspicious points have been explained in detail. I've already reported all the questions that Lord Bao has raised to His Majesty. This is a matter of national importance, and it's indeed inappropriate to speak of it so early. Bao Shiren raised his eyebrows. I'm afraid your words won't convince the public, Sun Lang said indifferently. Why would I need to convince the public? I only need to convince His Majesty. But this is a matter of the imperial court, Bao Shiren said in a low voice. Let's take a step back and assume that you have no authority and are acting on your own. First, you don't have a valid reason. Second, there's no one to supervise you. What if you take this opportunity to attack those who don't? His Majesty and all the officials in the imperial court will be kept in the dark. You can do whatever you want, and the imperial law will only exist in name. This is simply child's play. This must not happen. Furthermore, the Copper Sparrow Terrace is only one of the reasons. Qi Lianyin's death is even more suspicious. Forgive me for being blunt, but before Qi Lianyin's death, he had the most disputes with you. In other words, if he died on the street, you will not be able to escape suspicion. Do you want to let General Shunsei investigate this matter on your own? Sun Lang turned to the Emperor. What do you think, Your Majesty? The Emperor said indifferently. Lord Bao's words are meant to serve the country. You must know that a country has its laws and a family has its rules, Sun Lang nodded. Understand, Your Majesty. The Emperor's heart skipped a beat. What is this bastard plotting? Everything Bao Shiren had said today was a secret edict he had written last night. In other words, this was his plan. He wanted to make Bao Shiren a sharp knife to stab Sun Lang. After Sun Lang attacked the Copper Sparrow Terrace, he claimed that the Sky Demon was behind it. Then, he searched the entire city and used the name list as a pretext to make a fuss. He made all the influential guests of the Copper Sparrow Terrace feel insecure. This was all part of this traitor's evil plan. The so-called Sky Demon was completely fabricated out of thin air. He had intentionally allowed Bao Shiren to intervene in this matter. Naturally, he hoped that the iron-headed and shrewd Jing Zhouyin would be able to find evidence, clarify the truth, and rationally deny Sun Lang's fallacious reasoning and heresy. At the very least, he wanted Sun Lang to be distracted and exhausted from running for his life, so that he would reveal a flaw, allowing him to strike the enemy down. This included the matter of Qi Lianyin. In his heart, the Emperor was certain that Qi Lianyin's death was the work of his partner. Since the other party had flatly denied it, he could only pretend to be confused. But why didn't he put the blame on Sun Lang? Bao Shiren was openly investigating the truth, while he was secretly tampering with things. Once Bao Shiren obtained strong evidence, he would definitely fight Sun Lang to the death. No matter what the result was, Sun Lang would be in a difficult situation. For someone like Bao Shiren, who was capable but stubborn, as long as he was used in the right place, he could also play a very powerful role. It was a pity that such capable subordinates were too few and far between. He had already drawn up today's plan. Bao Shiren would start the matter, and he would beat the drum from the side. He would openly and logically press him step by step. The other officials who had a criminal record in the Copper Sparrow Terrace would also follow suit. After all, They didn't want to be caught by Sun Lang. But he couldn't push Sun Lang too far. Otherwise, this fellow would jump over the wall. The goal of this stage was to force Sun Lang to make appropriate concessions and compromises. That was, he would agree to the court sending elite forces to assist in the inspection. Then, he could justifiably send out the 4 great hunters of the past to begin a new round of battle with Sun Lang. Another plan would thus begin. Among the 4 great hunters, Bao Shiren's temperament was stubborn and he was hostile to Sun Lang. Song Huifu was not much better. Kunan had already fallen out with Sun Lang the day before yesterday. Di Huaying, because they were from the same sect, had to advance and retreat together with the other 3. Even better, their master was the retired Wu Ho. In the eyes of the neutral party, the fierce battle between Wu Ho's disciples and the Shunsei general was a very clear political signal. If in the future Sun Lang was on a whim and killed any of these 4 people by accident, it would draw out the old man Wu Ho. Then there'd be fun to watch. Or, if he didn't kill anyone, I could go with the flow and help him. But now, Sun Lang's reaction seemed to be a little strange. He actually very simply said, "I understand your majesty's meaning." What kind of scheme did this fellow have? The emperor's thoughts turned. The warning signs were already raised. Sun Lang was without a doubt a very difficult opponent to deal with. Not only was it reflected in his strength and temperament, it was also reflected in his style of doing things. This person's way of doing things was like a heavenly steed soaring across the skies, not sticking to one pattern. He was especially good at using tortoise fists. Whenever he threw a punch, he would blindly attack. What did he want to do this time? As expected, he had guessed correctly. He only heard Sun Lang sigh. The sigh faintly sounded out, filled with fatigue and calmness. It was as if a general who had been on the battlefield for a long time had seen through fame and glory, as if a prodigal who had been playing in the world for a long time had seen through the world of mortals. That day, this subject mobilized the troops to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace without permission because I had received extremely confidential information. The opportunity was fleeting and the matter was extremely confidential. I had no choice but to act decisively. Although mobilizing the troops without permission is a great taboo of the imperial court, this subject has a clear conscience and is willing to bear the consequences and accept the punishment. He showed a relieved smile and said in a low voice, "This subject does not regret what I did that day. After all, I succeeded in one strike. I found the most important evidence and caught the tail of the enemy." This subject found a lot of shocking evidence in the underground chamber of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. It was bloodstained and extremely cruel. It was inhumane. Lord Bao has also seen this evidence with his own eyes. He is honest and magnanimous, loyal and pure. He will definitely investigate this matter to the end. This subject believes that he will find the truth. The emperor was stunned. Without waiting for the emperor to speak, Sun Lang immediately continued, "That's right. This subject offended countless colleagues that day. The rumors in the Great Barren Mountain have not stopped. I am under suspicion and reproach. How can I recklessly judge the affairs of the state? I am an old soldier of Tianyuan. It is already a blessing from the heavens that I am still alive. How can I participate in such a major case?" "Your Majesty, please find someone else." The emperor said, "Wait." Sun Lang ignored him and clasped his hands toward the equally stunned Bao Shiren. Lord Bao is a capable subject. He is loyal and devoted. In the heart of the imperial court, his reputation is much better than this subject's. I am very relieved to entrust the matter of the Copper Sparrow Terrace to him. That day, when the Copper Sparrow Terrace was raided, he was the first to arrive at the scene. He followed this subject to see the bloody evidence and was also filled with righteous indignation. He swore that he would get to the bottom of the truth. I believe that he will do it. Therefore, this subject recommends Lord Bao to take over this matter. He will find peace for the innocent souls of the Copper Sparrow Terrace and make all the sinful scum pay the price. He will return the imperial capital to its former glory. As for the matter of Qi Lianyan, at this point his face was filled with infinite regret, sadness, and sorrow. General Shunsei said softly, He is Qi Lianyan's younger brother. In the Battle of the Great Bear Mountain, I watched Qi Lianyan die on the battlefield. I failed to save his life. Now, I have to watch his younger brother die in front of my eyes. I am very regretful, and I blame myself. If I didn't force him step by step, perhaps Qi Lianyan wouldn't have died. From his point of view, I have nothing to say that I am the one who killed him. I am indeed a suspect in Qi Lianyan's murder. I am indeed a suspect in his death. This is a reasonable inference made according to the law. I have nothing to say. This subject also requests Lord Bao of the Capital Magistrate to investigate this matter. This subject is willing to be interrogated by Lord Bao as a suspect. I will cooperate with the investigation until the truth comes to light. This will comfort the souls of the two brothers in heaven. At this point, Sun Lang showed a slightly bitter and lonely smile. This subject understands your Majesty's meaning. This subject's own affairs are still in a mess, so I will not meddle in other matters. There are many capable people in the court. This subject will be relieved to leave these matters to them. I will first do my own thing. This subject should have died long ago. I have been absent for 2 years. I am grateful that your Majesty did not abandon me and still bestowed me with a high position and generous salary. This subject is grateful to the point of tears. I wanted to rub my palms together and do something great, but he spoke in such an emotional whisper, exuding an extremely powerful aura of a one-man show. One sentence after another. It was impossible for anyone to interrupt. General Shansei raised his head and looked at His Majesty. He bowed deeply. As for the third matter, the issue of this subject's authority. Now that I am still a suspect, I dare not meddle in state affairs. The day before yesterday, Qi Lianyan announced on the street that this subject had slaughtered his colleagues in the Great Bear Mountain. Another subject of the same court reprimanded this subject in front of the imperial ancestral temple for having no monarch or father. Today, Lord Bao's stern reprimand has awakened this subject from his dream. I am so ashamed that I dare not accept this official position. At this point, his voice was choked with sobs. His back was tinged with loneliness. He no longer had the heroic spirit of the past. He had once harbored lofty ambitions and was once all-powerful. However, after returning to his homeland 2 years later, his dreams that had yet to be erased had been dealt a heavy blow by reality. His heroic past had been criticized, and rumors had turned into sharp blades that had pierced his tired body until it was riddled with scars. This might be the end of a hero. Hey, wait a minute. Don't King add scenes for yourself. The Emperor, Empress, Bao Shiren, and many others roared in their hearts. However, this bastard was so focused on acting that no one knew how to respond. Just as the Emperor was about to say something to control the situation, General Shansei suddenly covered his mouth. There seemed to be sparkling tears in the corners of his eyes. This famous general, who had won every battle on the battlefield, seemed to be unable to control his emotions. Forgive this subject's impoliteness. There was an obvious change in his voice, as if he was crying. Then, he abruptly turned around, lowered his head, and rushed out of the hall. The officials only felt a gust of wind sweep past them. In a moment, General Shansei was already running out of tears. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. Fuck you, wait a minute. The Emperor subconsciously reached out his hand, but he couldn't catch anything. Bao Shiren was stunned. In the awkward silence, Yin Song, who was in the crowd, lowered his head. He knew that Sun Lang had gone to put up posters. Chapter 9:47. The sudden turn of events almost caused everyone to twist their waists. Earlier, Bao Shiren had stepped forward to ask for 3 things. Those with eyes knew that Bao Haizi had probably received a hint from the Emperor, because these 3 requests were all directed at Sun Lang. Some people were secretly delighted and rubbed their palms in preparation to support Bao Shiren. Some people sat on the sidelines and quietly decided to watch the show. Others temporarily watched and waited to see how Sun Lang would respond. They felt that what followed next would be a heated debate in court. The Shinsei general would have to make an impassioned speech and even debate with the officials, setting off a new round of disputes between factions. Thus, more people decided to wait and see. They wanted to see how much power Sun Lang had in a purely court dispute. But what happened next was beyond everyone's expectations. Sun Lang's words were very particular. He first stated that the matter of the Copper Sparrow Terrace in Qilianyan had already been reported to the emperor. The implication was that this was a military secret, and before there was progress, it was not appropriate to announce it in court. But Bao Shiren said no. His actions were done without justification and without supervision. This was unruly and did not conform to the basic laws. He had to make it clear and follow the rules. Sun Lang ignored him and turned to ask the emperor, "Your Majesty, what do you think we should do?" The emperor said, "I think what Bao Haizi said makes sense." And so Sun Lang cried out loud. That was about it. There was no rebuttal, no debate, no argument. Instead, he lay down and allowed himself to be controlled. He completely obeyed the organization's arrangements and handed over full authority to Bao Shiren. His words were sincere and his expression was bitter. He was very much like a tragic hero who was not understood by the emperor and had sadly chosen to be loyal to the end. Lying down, handing over authority, and acting pitiful in one go. After playing the tragic card, he turned and ran, crying all the way out of court. He was so fast that he did not give the enemy a chance to fight back. By the time everyone reacted, the general had already disappeared without a trace. The officials looked at each other and were momentarily speechless. There was such a thing? The emperor was also stunned for a moment. Unconsciously, he said, "Why aren't you chasing after him?" Chase? How are they going to chase after him? Among the officials, there were some who were skilled in Qinggong. They roughly estimated the speed at which the general rushed out of the imperial court. According to this speed, Sun Lang should have already rushed out of the gate of heaven influence. As expected, before the eunuchs could move to give chase, the imperial guards who guarded the royal palace breathed heavily as they rushed into the golden palace. When they saw the emperor sitting peacefully on the dragon chair, they let out a heavy sigh of relief. According to them, just a moment ago, they saw General Shunsei running through the palace with a giant sword that looked like a door plank on his back. In an instant, he broke through the third level of the emperor's door. They couldn't stop him in time, and they didn't respond to him. They just kept rushing forward, leaving behind dust in their wake. These generals in the palace were all well informed. Combined with the general's political stance and the fact that he left the court without permission and ran all the way, they thought that he had already taken revenge in court. Now that their thoughts were clear, they were ready to run. When they thought of this, half of their souls and 7 spirits were scared out of their wits. By the time they rushed to the Golden Hall and found that His Majesty was safe and sound, by the time they wanted to turn back and chase after him, it would have been too late. With the speed at which Sun Lang left the palace, it was likely that he would have long disappeared without a trace. Once again, His Majesty showed a frustrated expression. The Hutta Kingdom was a powerful country with martial arts. Now, the country was powerful and the martial arts flourished. The power and prestige of the country were above all other countries. As the emperor of the Hutta Kingdom, he was often proud of this. Because the imperial court had the imperial army, a killing weapon that could multiply the fighting power of warriors, he did not have to worry about boring things like breaking the law with martial arts. After all, no matter how powerful a warrior was, he was no match for the imperial court. But now he was a little regretful. Really, he felt that things like martial arts were sometimes very troublesome, especially for a bastard like Sun Lang who did not play by the rules. With a body of earth-shattering martial arts, he was extremely difficult to deal with. Damn it, he ran away after acting pitiful and disappeared in an instant. They could not catch up with him, could not find him, and did not even have a place to reason with him. How shameless was he? The atmosphere in the court was a little awkward. The emperor and Bao Shiren were both caught off guard by Sun Lang's move of retreating in order to advance. This was especially so for the emperor. At this moment, he was somewhat embarrassed because Sun Lang had run away after lying down and acting pitiful. This completely created the stage effect of the suspicion and distrust of the monarch had deeply hurt the sensitive and delicate heart of the divine strategist. which made people gnash their teeth in anger. At this moment, the loyal Bao Shiren stepped forward to resolve the emperor's embarrassment. He knelt on the ground and said in a deep voice, "I, Bao Shiren, request to thoroughly investigate the matter of the Copper Sparrow Terrace and Qilianyan." The emperor took advantage of the situation and looked at Bao Shiren rather emotionally. Such a courtier really knew how to take the initiative to take the blame. He nodded and said slowly, "I am very comforted that you are loyal to the country and diligent in the affairs of the emperor. Moreover, the incident of the Copper Sparrow Terrace and Qilianyan's violent death are all under your jurisdiction. You have a good reason to investigate this matter as the governor of the capital city. Today, I grant you the emperor's command flag and imperial sword to investigate this matter strictly. You must find the truth and bring the criminals to justice." Speaking of this, he thought of Sun Lang's previous performance and could not help but gritted his teeth. In order to not make today's matter too ugly, he pinched his nose and added, "General Shansei is a founding member of the empire and a meritorious official of Tianyuan. He is also closely related to these two matters. When you investigate the case, you must consult General Shansei. You must treat him with respect and not be rude. Do you understand?" Bao Shiren nodded and said, "I understand." After the emperor finished speaking, he raised his head and looked at his courtiers. "What do you think?" The courtiers who were loyal to the emperor, the mediocre courtiers who were watching from the sidelines, and the rebellious courtiers who supported Sun Lang. The three groups of people in the imperial court actually had no objections. They all shouted together, "Our emperor is wise." A bunch of overcautious and irresponsible moths. The emperor cursed in his heart. General Tensei, who had been silent all this time, knew his father's intention. He stepped out and reported, "Father, I think it is inappropriate. The incident of the Copper Sparrow Terrace involves too many things. The death of Qilianyan and the fall of the seven luminary sword saint are undoubtedly two earth-shattering events. Although Lord Bao is a pillar of the imperial court, he is unable to attend to two things at once. I am afraid that he is not capable enough to handle two matters at once." The emperor smiled faintly. "Why, my son, are you willing to share my worries?" Empress bowed and said, "It is my duty to share your worries. However, I have a good relationship with General Shinsei in the past. If I interfere in this matter, I am afraid that it will cause criticism." The emperor smiled mischievously. "Good relationship? What kind of relationship is it?" Empress looked calm. "Naturally, it is the friendship of comrades who have fought side by side and killed enemies on the battlefield." The emperor's tone was somewhat meaningful. "I remember that after the battle of the Great Barren Mountain, my son, you once..." Empress said calmly, "Your Majesty, let's not talk about irrelevant things in the imperial court." The emperor was interrupted, but he was not angry at all. Instead, he showed a helpless and doting smile like a father. Okay, I know. I will not mention it." The father and daughter sang the same tune and acted out a two-man show, which surprised the courtiers. What were they doing? Only Empress knew what was going on. At this moment, she thought of her father's suggestion in the imperial palace. She thought of Sun Lang's whisper to her earlier in the day. A chill slowly rose in her heart. She didn't have the time to think carefully. She cupped her hands and said, "This son believes that Lord Bao alone is unable to handle such a serious case. We need to find someone from the imperial court who is as meticulous as hair and is able to see through the smallest detail." The emperor deliberately asked, "General Tensei, who do you think is worthy of such a heavy responsibility in the imperial court?" The emperor concubine glanced at Bao Shiren. "There are countless capable people in the imperial court, but the number of people who are qualified for this position is uncountable. However, since I am assisting Lord Bao in this case, I naturally have to submit to Lord Bao. Therefore, this son thinks that Lord Bao should recommend himself and let Her Majesty make a decision." General Tensei is right. The emperor's gaze fell on Bao Shiren. "Minister Bao, the inside story of the Copper Sparrow Terrace is complicated. Qilianyan's death is a matter of national importance. Such a big case cannot be treated lightly. I allow you to recommend people, regardless of whether they are in the imperial court or not. Bao Shiren bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your trust. I recommend 3 people. First, Empress and the Emperor echoed each other. Then, the topic shifted to the investigation candidates. Bao Shiren recommended his fellow disciples, Di Huaying of Bing County, Song Huifu of Nanping County, and their eldest senior sister, Kenan. The Emperor, who thirsted for talents and was a man of great talent and bold vision, naturally had no objections. He immediately summoned the 3 for an audience. Other than Di Huaying, who was in the court, Song Huifu and Kenan had been waiting in the palace for a long time. Song Huifu was a tall man with a gloomy expression and a taciturn man. Kenan, on the other hand, was young and petite with picturesque features. By the way, after Kenan entered the imperial court, she attracted about 1/5 of the people's attention for a long time. It could be seen that the trend of the imperial court's bureaucracy was changing. Then, they said some polite words. When the emperor heard that Kenan was the eldest senior sister, he was surprised and asked how old she was. Then Kenan cried and complained that she was practicing kung fu and became like this. The emperor lamented the poor life of the little girl and ordered some healing medicine from the imperial court. Then, he ordered the Imperial Academy of Medicine to conduct an expert consultation. In fact, he had already known about Kenan's situation. The ageless eternal spring skill could make a woman look young forever, but it was not unique in prolonging her life. For Kenan, if she kept the appearance of a child and was not cured, her vitality foundation would be greatly damaged. Otherwise, he would not have to pay such a high price to seek longevity. Then, the emperor also learned that the 4 of them were all marquis and were the 4 famous hunters who were famous in the 6th Fan School. After several years of separation, they were reunited in the imperial court. For a moment, the emperor was very happy. Although the emperor's happiness was a bit strange, it was not incomprehensible. After all, the 4 famous hunters were the version of the 4 famous hunters. Now, the event was reproduced and relaunched, and he gathered all of them. Moreover, Kenan had a new face of a young girl and became Kenan Lily. Obviously, the emperor felt a sense of accomplishment. The emperor was happy for a while and then casually rewarded them. He encouraged the 4 of them and told them to work hard. Then, he gave a retired Song Huifu and Kenan honorary titles of the 6th Fan School. After they finished investigating the case, there would be other rewards. Then, he talked about the 4's master. Everyone in the imperial court reminisced about the bitterness and the sweetness. Then, as usual, they praised the marquis. For a moment, the imperial court was full of joy. The emperor and his ministers were happy. The imperial court was full of a cheerful atmosphere. In a relaxed atmosphere, the emperor sighed in his heart. As expected, after Sun Lang left, the atmosphere of the imperial court became normal again. There were no idiots who came to court with big swords. There were no bastards who talked and laughed at the imperial court. There were no traitors who mocked the emperor in public. There were no traitors who always hid evil intentions. There were no sons of bitches who unknowingly led the atmosphere of the imperial court astray. This was great. Sun Lang, it would be better if you died early. Thinking of this, the emperor turned his gaze to the 4 famous hunters who had gathered again. What awaits you is undoubtedly an extremely difficult challenge. This time, Sun Lang retreated in order to advance. He must have an incomparably fierce move. I hope you can gather your spirits and deal with it with all your strength. Distract that guy for me. Make him tired and reveal a fatal flaw. In this way, your task will be completed. The emperor's words carry enormous weight. I will also fulfill my promise and give you a great reward. Especially you, Kenan. Your meridians have reversed and your body has returned to its youth. In a mortal world, no medicine can save you. Even the strong masters are helpless, but I have a way to help you. Sun Lang thought he could persuade you to rebel. He is too naive. The emperor's thoughts were interrupted by Bao Shiren. Your Majesty, I have just reported 3 matters. Only 2 have been resolved. Since the matter of the Copper Sparrow Terrace has been entrusted to me, then the general has nothing to do in the capital. I ask your majesty to entrust him with political matters, so as to prevent a bright pearl from being covered in dust." The emperor nodded. "The Shinsei general is the pillar of the country. I naturally have to entrust him with important tasks. He has suffered for 2 years. Today he has been wronged. I understand him, but the country has its own laws. He cannot act recklessly. For this, I am deeply ashamed and uneasy." With these words, the ministers bowed together. "Your Majesty is merciful." Of course, no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. The emperor continued, "But after all, the general has been out of power for 2 years. The court is not the same as the army, and the matters are different. In addition, he is in a bad mood today. In my opinion, let him rest for a few days before entrusting him with important tasks. What do you all think?" The nodding bugs continued to respond. "Your Majesty is wise." Wise? Although it's just flattery, it can be said that this is a wise decision. Wise and wise. I can see through everything. The emperor's gaze passed through the dense crowd and looked outside the hall. Across the vast square, he looked at the world beyond. "Sun Lang, do you think I can't guess what you want to do? I have already seen through your little ability. I am waiting." After discussing some unimportant matters, the court meeting was announced to be over. The ministers dispersed. The 4 famous hunters who had been regrouped stayed behind. They received the emperor's command flag, imperial swords, and other royal equipment. They also received the emperor's admonishment. Their mission was about to officially begin. After bidding farewell to the emperor, they left the imperial city under the guidance of the eunuch. After leaving the imperial city, the 4 of them let out a long sigh at the same time. At this time, the morning sun had already risen, and the sky was already bright. A slightly cold wind blew on the vast imperial road. The 4 great hunters looked at each other, and a smile that hadn't appeared in a long time appeared on their faces. Old friends had met, so they definitely had a lot to say, so there had to be wine. Di Huaying smiled. "We can drink at night, but not now. Senior sister and Hui Fu are alone. Shirun and I have official business. I have to go to the Supreme Court to hand over the government affairs. Shirun also has to go back to the capital government to make arrangements. Why don't we part ways here? I will go to the Supreme Court. Senior sister and Hui Fu will go with Junior Bao." Song Hui's father looked dignified and dignified. He was born to be an official, but his eyebrows were often furrowed. He looked a little depressed, as if he had endless worries. He said faintly, "I'll go with you to the Supreme Court and pay a visit to my former colleagues in the Ministry of Justice." Di Huaying thought for a moment and nodded. "Okay, senior sister, what do you think?" Kunan was usually a valiant and impetuous woman. Even if she encountered such a situation, her temperament would not change. At most, she would show the weakness and helplessness of a woman when she asked Sun Lang for help, crying and pleading a few words. But in front of her junior brothers, she naturally had to put on the image of a big sister. She waved her small hand. "Let's do it this way. We will meet at the capital government and discuss how to deal with that big bad guy." The capital government sent a carriage to pick them up. Di Huaying and Song Huifu walked side by side. At this time, the sky was already bright. The city gate opened and farmers and merchants entered the capital. The shops on both sides of the street opened. Steaming hot breakfast was out of the oven. The noise of the pedestrians and the hawkers. After a night's rest, the world's most prosperous city showed its vitality again. The 2 bought some breakfast on the side of the street and ate as they walked. Song Huifu was a man of few words, and Di Huaying seemed to have something on her mind. Even after walking for a long distance, the 2 of them still didn't say a word. Di Huaying secretly glanced at her junior brother. When she was studying under her master had joked that other than her eldest senior sister, the 3 of them had very different personalities even though they were similar in age. It was very interesting, because the 3 of them had different personalities. It was like they were the same person in 3 different stages of life. Bao Shiren was impulsive and stubborn. Song Huifu was silent and firm. Di Huaying was tactful and intelligent. Therefore, because Bao Shiren was not afraid of the powerful and daring, he had a good reputation. He was chosen by the emperor and was promoted to be the capital government official. He guarded the capital and suppressed the nobles. He enjoyed it and had a good reputation. He was loved and respected by the people. But in reality, he was just a knife in the emperor's hand. Because of this, he offended many people. In comparison, her career as an official was smoother. For 10 years, Baoshiren could still keep pace with her. But 10 years later, or even 20 years later, things would be different. Just like what her master had said, only people with a personality like mine are suitable to be an official. And junior brother Song. His personality was not different from that of Baoshiren. He might even be more stubborn than Baoshiren. But after he was disappointed, he immediately left, resigned, and returned to his hometown. Baoshiren, on the other hand, was someone who would not turn back even if he hit a wall. Once he set his mind on something, he would fight to the death. If it were other things, it would be fine. But this time, he was involved in the story of the Great Bear Mountain. He was involved in the battle between General Shunsei and the Emperor. Baoshiren saw the other as his enemy. Unknowingly, he had become a knife in the Emperor's hand with his personality. Even if he saw through it, he would not give up. Di Huaying sighed silently. The situation now was very delicate. A few years later, the four famous hunters were reunited. The four of them once again faced the enemy side by side. The enemy was not a world-renowned divine thief, nor was it a notorious bandit. The enemy this time was more terrifying than all the opponents they had faced in the past added together. It was a character that could stand shoulder to shoulder with their master. And their team of four was very delicate. Junior brother Bao's, well, the fight was the strongest. Or rather, it was because of him. Although senior sister Ku was very arrogant, most of her hatred for Sun Lang was because he refused to treat her injuries. In other words, if Sun Lang waved at her, she might run over to his side. The worst possibility was that she had secretly reached an agreement with Sun Lang. Di Huaying did not want to talk about his own thoughts. Right now, what he wanted to know the most was what his junior brother Song, this taciturn but decisive fellow, was thinking. He had resigned and returned to his hometown, but he was summoned back by an imperial edict. Basking in the glory of his fellow disciples, he was inexplicably on the front line against General Shinsei. It was as if the blame had fallen from the sky. He was the most innocent one. He thought for a moment and finally took the initiative to say, "Junior brother Song." Song Huifu turned his head and said, "Senior brother Di." For some reason, Di Huaying had a bad feeling when he saw Song Huifu's blank face. He said carefully, "In the Golden Palace, I saw that you had a straight face and didn't like to talk much." Song Huifu said expressionlessly, "Because I don't like His Majesty." He said it. Di Huaying covered his face. "If asterisk king knew it." He sighed and said, "Then why did you come back?" "First, disobeying an imperial edict is a serious crime. It will implicate one's family." Song Huifu said, "Secondly, His Majesty is very busy. He cares about the world. Why would he remember a small person like me? He ordered me to come to the capital. It must have something to do with you guys. If I didn't come, I wouldn't be at ease." Hearing this, Di Huaying was a little touched. He reached out and patted junior brother Song on the shoulder, revealing a knowing smile. The four of them were as close as brothers, as if they were their own flesh and blood. Therefore, even if he did not want to be enemies with Sun Lang, since junior brother Bao insisted, he would accompany him to the end. Junior brother Song must be thinking the same thing. At this moment, Song Huifu continued, "I didn't expect to come to the capital because of this. The emperor created this problem himself and wants to use us as a shield. I've decided to give him some trouble." He said again. Di Huaying shouted in his heart. Before he could say anything, Song Huifu stared at him and said, "Senior brother, you must be thinking the same thing, right?" Di Huaying swallowed the words he was about to say. He waved his hand and said, "Don't say it here." At this moment, Bao Shiren and Kunan had already returned to the capital office. Kunan was in a daze in her room, bored to death. Bao Shiren pushed open the door and came in. His left hand was holding a guqin, and his right arm was holding a wine jar. He smiled like a child and said, "Senior sister, How can there be wine without a guqin? Chapter 948. The atmosphere in the Copper Sparrow Terrace was gloomy. Grief and anger shrouded the brothel, and the air was filled with a gloom that could not be dissolved. Just as the sky brightened, everyone saw General Shansei come back alone with a heavy expression. He was unhappy and ignored everyone's greetings. He silently went upstairs to his room and locked himself inside. At this time, the people guarding the Copper Sparrow Terrace were either the deputy generals and soldiers of the various armies or the employees of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Even though they were curious, no one had the guts to ask what had happened. After a while, the generals also came back cursing. Under everyone's curious and shocked gazes, the generals of the imperial court swarmed to the 7th floor. "Open the door, General! Open the door! Don't be silent inside, I know you're inside." Anjua's slightly exaggerated shout was filled with worry and indignation. The other generals also responded in unison, but the continuous shouting and banging on the door indicated that General Sun had refused to let his subordinates in. Seeing this, the people who did not know the situation became even more puzzled. What exactly had happened? The general shouted for a while, and then Su Dingfang's angry roar sounded. "Brothers, you don't have to knock on the door. If you ask me, His Majesty did not do it properly. You have the guts to knock on the general's door, but do you dare to come with me to the palace gate to make a wish? Damn it! Who is Bao Heizi to steal the general's credit?" Bao Heizi. Was it Bao Shiren? Sir Bao? Steal the credit? The matter concerned the celebrity mayor, Bao Shiren, so the crowd could not help but prick up their ears. Shan Xiongxin loudly agreed. Yes. The general has been running around for 2 years and finally succeeded in one strike at the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He caught the tail of the Sky Demon remnants and was about to show off his skills to exterminate the Sky Demon. But the imperial court intervened and took away this great credit. I, Shan Xiongxin, am the first to refuse to accept this. The generals were filled with anger and shouted in unison, "Let's go together! Let's go together!" At this time, an angry roar sounded out of nowhere. "All of you, shut up!" It was the general's voice, but it was different from the confidence in his speech on the Copper Sparrow platform. It was different from the high-spirited manner in which he had pointed out the country. At this moment, his voice was low and calm, containing an indescribable sorrow. He asked, "What do you want?" Android said loudly, "General, His Majesty has been misled by a scoundrel. The imperial court is unreasonable, and we are not convinced. It was you who had been running around in the past 2 years. It was you who concealed your identity. It was you who fought alone without caring about fame and fortune. You finally caught the last trace of the extraterrestrial devil. The glory and the credit all belong to you. How can the imperial court take it away so easily?" Sun Lang sighed and said, "The imperial court has its own difficulties. Hutu has its own national conditions. This is the law of the country. After all, this is no small matter. How can I make a decision on the spot?" Pongji said angrily. "Even so, they can't just kick you away." Sun Lang said slowly, "We Tianyuan soldiers take it as our duty to protect the country and defeat the Sky Demon. Now that the demon's traces have been revealed, and Bao Shiren is quite talented, we can follow the vine to find the melon. For me, this is enough. I didn't do this for fame and glory." Yin Song shouted, "You don't care about fame and fortune, but the imperial court can't be so heartless. You sacrificed so much for this matter, and in the end, Sun Lang said softly, "I'm willing." Android roared angrily, "But this is not fair. This is the injustice of the imperial court. The hearts of the people are treacherous. They must think that if they let the general wipe out the Sky Demon in one fell swoop, then the general's reputation will instantly rise to the top. These despicable people don't want to see the general gain the glory of this great merit, so they are spreading rumors. Even His Majesty—" "Shut up," Sun Lang shouted. "Talking about the imperial court is punishable by death." Android straightened his neck and shouted, "So be it. Maybe it's not just the despicable people who are causing trouble. Maybe the Sky Demon is causing trouble. They know that if the general investigates this matter, these Sky Demon remnants will die without a burial ground. They are afraid of this, so they secretly control the court, deceive His Majesty, and attack the general. They want to take away the general's power and merit, so that the general will stay away from this matter. The general roared, "Android!" Android also roared back without fear, "Marshal, how long are you going to back down? It was like this during the war, it was like this in the Great Desolate Mountain, and it's also like this after you come back. Why can't you think more for yourself?" Sun Lang said coldly, "If every minister thinks for himself, who will be responsible for the country?" Android roared, "F*CK the country. The imperial court is tyrannical, and the emperor is muddle-headed. Impudent." A heavy voice sounded, followed by the sound of blood spurting out. The Wanfeng Tower was in chaos. Many soldiers and young ladies looked worried. They craned their necks to look at the 7th floor, but they could only see the backs of the generals. They knew nothing else. People could only hear the general's roar, Android's weak but stubborn cries, and the general's persuasion. These generals, who had fought fearlessly on the battlefield of Tianyuan, had taken off their layers of armor. They were weak and helpless like children. This was because the enemy they were facing this time could not be defeated with swords. Android's voice became very weak, but he still hissed, "Marshal, kill me with one strike. You gave me my life, and I will return it to you today. I only hope that after I die, you will dig out my eyeballs and embed them on the top floor of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. I want to see with my own eyes that you have nowhere to retreat and fall into the abyss." The general roared, "Bastard!" and Zhua burst into tears. The other generals also rushed forward and hugged the general, crying and begging to prevent him from punching Zhua to death in a fit of rage. In a split second, a tragic and helpless atmosphere spread out and quickly infected every floor. Although no one had seen it with their own eyes and did not know the cause and effect of the matter, they were still able to deduce the whole story from the few words. After all, some things were more believable if they were speculated by one's own mind. Whether it was the soldiers or the staff of the Copper Sparrow Terrace, they had all heard the general's speech and explanation that night. They knew that General Shansei had raided the Copper Sparrow Terrace to do an earth-shattering thing, and that was to eliminate the last remnants of the Sky Demon hidden within the human race. For this reason, he had disappeared after the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. He had cast aside the supreme glory of defeating the Sky Demon and returning victorious, and he had silently searched for clues in his loneliness. In order to not expose any flaws, he had not even let anyone know about this. Everyone thought that he was dead. His family, his fellow soldiers, his friends. He had sacrificed too much. However, according to what the generals had said today, could it be, not to mention the soldiers, the young ladies of the Copper Sparrow Terrace were the top socialites in the industry. Being quick-witted was the most basic requirement, so their logical thinking and associative abilities were extremely strong. These talented girls usually read history and were good at using history as a mirror and combining previous examples, so it was easy for them to fill in the gaps and complete the logical conclusion. Could it be that the Imperial Court has sent someone to take over the remnants of the Sky Demon? This why? Silly girl, this is the Emperor's scheming. How could His Majesty sit back and watch another prestigious general with outstanding military achievements rise? He must find a way to suppress him. Perhaps the officials of the Imperial Court have also contributed to this. The general is good at war, but not politics. The general is good at scheming, but not fighting. Yesterday, he was the backbone of the country, and today, he is a skeleton in the grave. Since ancient times, there have been many examples of the Imperial Court suppressing meritorious generals. Soft sighs rose and fell one after another. All kinds of insider analysis and discussions spread out as if they had grown wings. The imperial capital was known as the most benevolent place at the foot of the emperor. It gathered the power of the world to support the city. Therefore, the political cultivation, cultural level, and economic foundation of the people in the imperial capital were quite good. The discussions on the streets and alleys were about the country's politics. It seemed that even the ruffians in the marketplace knew the policies of the martial arts hall like the back of their hands. This was the case for the commoners, and it was even more so for the top socialites. These young ladies usually came into contact with a group of the most respected and powerful people in the country. Over time, under the influence of the influence, some things could be said clearly and logically, and their analysis of the truth was not far from the truth. Some people began to feel indignant. The imperial court is indeed not doing the right thing. The general is a little too blindly loyal. This kind of thing should be argued for. After all, it was the Ho-Tu kingdom. The people worshipped martial arts and advocated fighting. From top to bottom, there was a decisive and murderous aura. There was not much of a market for the saying, if the emperor wants the subject to die, the subject has to die. Even the more effeminate literati mostly advocated, if the emperor wants the subject to be courteous, the subject must be loyal to the emperor. Only a few shameless fellows would coyly say, if the emperor does not understand, the subject cannot be disloyal. If the father is not kind, the son cannot be unfilial, and so on. They had to risk being ridiculed. Are the emperor and your father's balls easy to lick? And F***ck your mother. How can righteousness and filial piety be mentioned in the same breath? Therefore, based on this social atmosphere, even the soft young ladies in the brothel had a kind of heroic spirit to fight against the heavens and earth. They certainly felt that the imperial court's method of burning the bridge after crossing the river was too much, but they were also angry at the general's behavior of lying down and allowing himself to be manipulated. Why not argue for what is right? Why not have a fight in the imperial court? After all, there were often fights in the Golden Palace. The officials of the 6 ministries fought each other, the civil officials and generals fought each other, the censore counterattacked, and the local officials came to the capital to cause trouble. These stories of the imperial court were often spread out every now and then, feeding countless storytellers and writers who made a living from them. For example, a certain expert of the Ministry of Justice punched someone 16 times and made him vomit blood. Afterward, the imperial physician said that the injury was only minor. A certain envoy of the kingdom of acute metal was involved in a fight in the imperial court and struggled to survive the aftershock of the palm wind and the fist aura. It left a very deep psychological shadow in him, and so on. Therefore, in the eyes of the simple people of the empire, fighting in the imperial court was not a problem at all. If the general was wronged in the imperial court, he should beat them up first. But soon, the general answered their doubts. After a burst of crying and shouting on the 7th floor, the general's low voice slowly rang out. Do you think that I am willing? Do you think that I am willing? But I have no choice. When I called you to attack the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, I privately mobilized troops in the capital. According to the laws of the empire, this is already a great taboo. You think that I should argue for what is right, that I should fight to the end? Then I would like to ask, if our enemies use this as an excuse to investigate the crime of privately gathering troops, what should I do? Answer me. This is not a small crime. This is a crime that will lead to dismissal and punishment. Severe punishment and execution are also not a problem. When the time comes, you are all arrested and imprisoned. What should I do? Is this a problem that can be solved by fighting in the imperial court? Is this a problem that can be solved by arguing for what is right? What should I do then? Should I break out of prison, or should I directly rebel? What do you think? His voice gradually became more and more intense, containing anger and unwillingness that he could not suppress. But soon, his voice gradually lowered and became relieved again. So this is enough. If I retreat, I can at least make them lose face and be unable to continue attacking. Compared to the so-called honor and merit, I want to protect all of you first. I have to protect myself first. Only then will I have the chance to continue fighting. That's all. The so-called merit is actually not that important. So let's disperse. Don't make a fuss. In the deathly silence, someone suddenly shouted and madly rushed down the stairs. Even more generals moved with heavy footsteps and left step by step. The atmosphere of solemnity and helplessness was further embellished. Because of the outstanding skills of the actors, the spectators felt their chests tighten. A feeling of injustice gradually arose. And on the seventh floor, Sun Lang gave Yin's song and the others a look. Have you all memorized it? The literati, who had been born as civil officials, gave him a thumbs up. At this time, they were bent over their desks and rapidly writing, recording all the bitter drama that had just happened. They had all been influenced by the general and received the baptism of this person's explosive propaganda skills from the information age. They knew how to bring the rhythm to a brilliant and varied scene. The dramatic story just now, as well as Sun Lang's closed-door writing about the capital governor, these things would set off an even greater frenzy in the imperial capital. Although the natives of the other world also understood the principle of preventing the mouths of the people from spreading, they were still ignorant and did not truly realize the enormous energy and power that the people contained. Although the wisdom of the people was not yet developed, although the ruling class still had an overwhelming advantage, the power of the people could still be easily borrowed under certain special circumstances. For example, when there was a traitor in the ruling class. Bao Shiren probably did not know that the moment the Shunsei general ran out of the court in tears, the confrontation between him and Sun Lang had officially begun. Creating pressure and rhythm from the outside was only one part of the layout. This was the work of the civil officials, while the generals had other tasks. Shan Xiongxin, Su Dingfang, Pan Mei, and the others went downstairs with angry faces. People wisely avoided them to avoid bumping into the muzzle of the gun. The generals scattered in all directions, each with an unfriendly expression, as if they were saying, "I want to cause trouble." After today's drama, the people at the Copper Sparrow Terrace all had different feelings. Although there were many who felt that the general had been wronged, there were also many who were secretly happy. For example, the people with vested interests, the managers of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. They were the high-ranking employees of the shareholders of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. In the end, they were beaten dizzy by the Shunsei general's tortoise fists. Naturally, they were angry but did not dare to say anything. Now that they heard that Sun Lang had been beaten in the court, they were naturally pleasantly surprised. They did not believe that there was a sky demon hidden in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Now that the situation in the court had changed, it was likely that the officials had begun to show their strength. In other words, this dark cloud was about to disperse. But just as they were incomparably happy and secretly praying to the heavens, the door of the room was violently pushed open. A ferocious-looking, murderous-looking ruffian entered with a sword in his hand. The murderous aura from the Tianyuan battlefield made the managers' faces turn pale. The ruffian's orders were simple and crude, and they were more or less the same. "I don't care about Blackie Bao. You better know what's good for you." This was the more crude Shan Xiongxin. "I'll let you know, sir. Although the court has already made a decision, the Copper Sparrow Terrace is still the general's property." His Majesty also admitted this in front of all the officials before the Imperial Ancestral Temple. As the saying goes, a ruler does not joke about his words. Do you understand what I'm saying? Remember to give some orders to the girls under your command. This was the more gentlemanly Su Dingfang. "Sai, what do you think this is called? You also have conscience. You also put yourself in my shoes. Can you tolerate this kind of thing? Anyway, I can't tolerate it. You should feel angry, right? My life was saved by the general. I regard him as my family. When my family is wronged, I have to stand up for him and fight for him. You can understand this feeling, can't you? You also have a family, don't you? You should understand this feeling of protecting your family, right? Well, you also have a family. That's good. We've reached a consensus. You see, it's very simple. We all have families, but you're different from me. The difference is that your family may fall into my hands at any time. So, you have to do whatever I ask you to do." This was the android that he was best at playing, having learned some of Sun Lang's teachings. 1 spread to 10, and 10 to 100. The news spread very quickly. Needless to say, the generals and soldiers held a meeting directly. The officers and soldiers of all levels unified their thoughts and learned the advanced spirit conveyed in the meeting. They were determined to unite closely around the general and fight against the evil forces of the court. The staff of the Copper Sparrow Terrace also had people who hinted and made arrangements. The soldiers acted as quickly as possible. They wanted to build the Copper Sparrow Terrace into a solid fortress that could not be penetrated by anything. They wanted to show that despicable Bao what they were made of. On the 7th floor, Yin Song, who was writing furiously, suddenly raised his head. "Is this arrangement useful?" Sun Lang said lightly. "That depends on what it is useful for. The composition of the Copper Sparrow Terrace is very complicated. This is the Emperor's property. Many big shots in the court have a stake in it. They have been operating here for a long time. Perhaps some inconspicuous servant is a spy who has been carefully placed here. Perhaps he has already received orders. When Bao Shiren comes in to investigate, this brave person will step forward and boldly accuse Bao Qingtian of all my crimes." Speaking of this, he laughed. "Don't underestimate the Emperor. Although our Emperor is a little old now, and his energy is no longer focused on national politics, he is still the Emperor. He is the supreme ruler of the world and has a great advantage. He has an endless number of chess pieces." Pangji glanced at him and frowned. "Then why did you give in?" Sun Lang said with a smile. "This is a game of chess. What we need to ensure is the final victory, and not be obsessed with eating every piece of the other party's chess pieces. Occasionally, if we let him make a move, perhaps it will be even better." Pangji said, "Open? You said it yourself." The chess pieces that the Emperor and others have placed here may have already received the news and are preparing to slander and accuse you to Bao Shiren. Not only did they take down a chess piece, but a fierce attack is coming. How are you going to deal with it? Of course I will deal with whatever comes my way. Don't worry. The person in charge of the investigation, this time, is Bao Shiren. Sun Lang smiled meaningfully. People like Bao Haizi are actually the easiest to deal with. The Emperor wants to use him as a weapon, but whether or not he can do it is still a problem. After all, I'm very good at snatching weapons with my bare hands. At the same time, Di Huaying handed over her work. Song Huifu paid a visit to his old colleague. After a secret meeting, the two quietly arrived at the capital office. In front of the door, Di Huaying tilted her head and looked at her junior brother. "What do you do next?" Song Huifu said, "Go to the Copper Sparrow Terrace." Di Huaying frowned. "The general is not easy to deal with." "I know." Song Huifu nodded. "That is why we have to encourage Bao Haizi to go. Let him hit his head and bleed first." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.